Hello, everyone. Welcome to Indie Game Club. Super excited to have you all here today. Whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. As you can see, we have an amazing group of guests, as we do every week. If we can get these guests, and we'll have one more who will be jumping in any moment here, if we can have our amazing guest just wave to the camera so everybody knows and sees you all. Awesome. We will get to them shortly, but first we're going to do, as we do every week, give you a rundown of our upcoming events and previous events. My name is Michael Zytkow. I am the founder and executive director of Potions and Pixels. We're a nonprofit organization based out of beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina, where we're broadcasting from right now. I got a little of the 90s vibe going right here today, because we're, of course, going to be taking it back a bit old school, depending on your age, going back to the mid to late 90s and hitting you all with the haunted PS1 demo disc. So we're really excited to try something a little bit different today for Indie Game Club. We can't wait to jump into that. But first, as I said, let's talk a bit about our schedule. So, of course, Indie Game Club, we air every single week on Thursdays, as is today. We have our discussion with a great group of guests that we break down the games. We always describe this kind of as a book club, but for indie games. And typically on Mondays, we stream. That's Potions and Pixels, but all of our guests have different schedules, which we will be linking to. So make sure to check them out for sure. They all have incredible streams. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff to this amazing group of guests. We are continuing our Tuesday community conversation series. If you have not participated in that before, we definitely encourage you to do so. It's a live community conversation focused on a wide variety of topics. So we kicked that off with Black Voices in Gaming. You can still watch these on YouTube and Facebook. We followed that up with Women in Gaming with the amazing folks over at the Athena Alliance, two of whose members are with us here today. So we are always excited to work with the Athena Alliance, an amazing group of people. Again, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff to their main page, as well as all of their stream team members. We followed that up with Custom Game Controllers, a conversation where we explored the art, technology, and people who are modding game controllers, building custom game controllers. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to our sponsors for all of these conversations, our good friends at Lowe's. We really appreciate their support to make this all possible. As well as in that conversation, we want to give a shout out to Red Bull, who threw in an arcade stick. Really appreciate that. And shout out to all the people who are hosting right now. Thank you, King of the Nerds, for hosting. Really appreciate that so much. We love these conversations and hope you all do as well. So thank you for the love. Games to the Rescue was our opportunity to explore how games are being used to fight coronavirus. Yes, indeed, outside of social distancing and responsibly wearing your mask, you can fight coronavirus by playing games like Fold It and Eterna. So definitely check out that episode. Again, all of these are on Facebook and YouTube if you missed out on them the first time. Black Voices and Esports was a great conversation, going in depth on a topic that me and these gentlemen have been discussing for quite some time. So really happy to finally get that on the record. So make sure to check that out. Then we did a series where we explored the game Tell Me Why, and specifically that was part of our LGBT plus Voices in Gaming, along with our good friends at the Athena Alliance, Charlotte Gamers Network, and PvP Hub. If you're unfamiliar with this game, this is the first game from a major studio and major developer with a transgender protagonist. So I absolutely love this game. I highly recommend it. It is played in 3 chapters, and each of those chapters is about 3 hours long. So it's definitely a doable game. You can segment it how you want, but I think it's a really great experience. And part 1 of our conversation was not only exploring LGBT representation in the game industry, but also a discussion of Tell Me Why Chapter 1. And then we followed that up with a discussion of Tell Me Why Chapters 2 and 3. So after you played those games, if you want to check out those conversations, please check them out and let us know what you think. We had a really good time, really in-depth conversation with a lot of amazing voices from our community. Then we recently, last week, we had History of the Charlotte Fighting Game Community, Part 1. If you are familiar with, I should say, any gaming community, probably has a strong fighting game scene, and Charlotte is no exception. We have an incredibly strong fighting game community. And this is something that's been going on since the 90s, for sure. And so we really just wanted to pay homage and respect to all those people that were before us, keeping the community alive. Potions and Pixels certainly isn't the first or the last kind of gaming organization, and we want to show love to all those people who are running tournaments out of college dorm rooms, garages, whatever it may be. So definitely check that out for sure. And next week we are super excited, or I should say this upcoming week, this Tuesday, we are excited for Hispanic Voices in Gaming with Julio E. Nazario, who is a amazing board game designer based here in North Carolina. We'll be discussing a variety of his games, including the one you see there in the background, which is called Control. It's spelled CTRL. You can find it in Target right now. It's actually, if you can peek behind all these lights in my room, I know I'm not on screen right now, but after I get back on screen, you can see a copy of the game is in the corner. It's a great game to play with family during this time. Of course, outside of discussing games, we love to play them too. So on Wednesdays and Saturdays, we have our online game nights. It's a great opportunity to connect with people and play video games and board games. We have game nights throughout the week, but Wednesdays and Saturdays are the main days. And we have, I was going to say last but not least, but we got a couple other things here. We have also Gaming for Charlotte. We had a big event yesterday that we did with the planning department of the city of Charlotte. If you've been following our social media, you know that we are developing quite a few games, and we recently created a game for the planning department. It had a really large online Zoom event where people could play the game online. There was a limited amount of seats, and they all got, people reserved them within a few days. So if you didn't get a chance to join this event, make sure to jump on our next one, which is going to be November 18th from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. It's a great opportunity to play the new Charlotte Future city building game made by yours truly with your neighbors. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we have a lot of Smash, part of our Potions and Pixels online league stuff to check out. We're going to have a big final tournament coming up, so I will definitely be sharing more about that soon. That was a lot. Whew. All right, I'm back here with everybody, and we're joined by Davon Sanders here, is jumping in. Thank you, Davon. Hopefully we're dealing with a few audio things, so we're gonna figure that out. But we have this amazing group of guests, always coming with their A game and bringing that next level analysis that you know us for here on Indie Game Club. So we're super excited to be discussing the Haunted PS1 demo disc. So before we shoot out to the trailer for that game, let's start with some introductions here. You know her. She's a series regular. She always comes with her A game, and we're super excited to have her here today discussing these games. Angelic Layla, can you introduce yourself and how people can follow you online?
Hey guys, what's up? It's Angelic Layla. You guys can follow me on Twitch and all my social media, which is Instagram, Facebook. It's all Angelic Layla. I usually stream fighters, RPGs, MMOs. Recently, I've been playing Genshin Impact, but you'll also find me in the Athena Alliance, everywhere. Always active in the Discord and the Facebook, and as well as the Game Her. So,
love
me.
it. Thanks, Layla, as always. And as is tradition on the show, let's clap it up. Again, we're all social distancing, but we got to clap it up, keep that energy alive. Thank you, Layla, for being with us. Next is a new series regular that we're super excited to have on the show. Of course, if you are a fan of ours and you've been watching since the beginning, just 2 months ago, you will recognize her, Legend of the Star, the goddess of indie games. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi, I'm Legend of the Star. I'm a streamer mainly on Twitch. You can find me at LGND of the Star. Everywhere. Twitter, Facebook. I think Facebook. I'm not sure. I'm not really active on there, gotta be honest. But I mainly just stream indies. That's my passion. And I'm excited to talk about our games tonight. I can't wait.
Thank you. We're excited too, and we really appreciate you being here. Let's clap it up for Legend. Thanks so much, Legend. Appreciate you being on here. Next, you recognize him as well. Series regular, Tony Taiga. Let's clap it up for Tony. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, okay. Hey guys, I always had a struggle with the whole introduction, so I'm just gonna keep it basic. Hey, my name's Tony. I go by Tony Taiga 90 across different gaming platforms, and I like video games.
We're glad you do. Otherwise, this would be a really awkward show to host today for sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tony. Can't wait to hear what you think about the games we're playing today. Let's clap it up for Tony. Thank you. All right, next, right above Tony, we have Mr. Bobby Hutter. Bobby, can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. It won't be good, though. My name is Bobby. I live in Charlotte, and I met Michael through Potions and Pixels. If I do stream, it's under the handle Crash Test Zombie with a 1 as an I. I mainly stream Overwatch. I'm not good at it. In the background is my beautiful girlfriend, Patience.
Hey,
She's
Patience.
actually playing. She's actually playing the Haunted PS1 game right now. So
I love it. It's a really like professional like setup in terms of like maybe we can just peek over and see what game she's playing.
I should do this more. Yeah. But yeah. I'm so happy to be here and to meet you all. I've already followed Legend of the Star on Twitch, and I'll make sure that I get everybody else as well. As should you watching at home. But yeah, we'll find out how much of a scaredy cat I am later on in the stream, and yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Bobby. Really, I always enjoy talking to you about games. So it's so great to have you on here today to be able to break this stuff down further. So let's clap it up for Bobby. Thank you. And last but certainly not least is Mr. Davon Sanders, who I should say that History of the Fighting Game Community event he's largely responsible for that. So I really appreciate him. He's as much as he doesn't like titles or anything like that, I'll say that in my mind, in my heart, he's the kind of the resident fighting game historian for our community. So I appreciate him keeping that world alive and keeping that history alive. But Davon, hopefully audio is okay. We're about to find out right now. Or else,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Audio, internet. We're doing it. We're doing it live. Awesome. All right, Davon, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Davon. I go by. You can find me on GMZ Charlotte on Twitter. I play fighters. Not very great at them. I've just been here a while. Been here a long time. I do some dev here and there. Somewhat stream, not really, but my stream handle or on Twitch is Urios, YURIOHS. That's about it. I don't play horror games, so and I'm also kind of squeamish, so this may be interesting. But I'm probably not going to scream. I don't do that, so we'll see.
I love it. Let's clap it up for Davon. And we should say, for sure, as part of Indie Game Club, if this is your first time watching or not, you know that we try to do a variety of different games and bring in a variety of different guests on purpose to have different opinions. So it is totally fine to share your opinion freely and say what you like, what you don't like. That's the fun of the conversation. Awesome. Well, before we dive right into this trailer here, I think I hear someone. Layla, Tony, do you hear them too? Legend? Bobby?
Oh boy.
Davon?
Corny on another smoke break.
Of course,
Yeah.
this is our seventh guest that you will see right here on the show. We appreciate her stopping by every single week. We love her. This is Courtney, which I'm sure Bobby and Davon are like, what the hell is going on here?
I'm confused. I don't hear anything.
So if you are if you are a longtime watcher of this, you know that now we've had regularly questions coming from our little friend Courtney here, who we can't quite tell if we love or are afraid of, or maybe a mix of emotions. But she always comes with a lot of questions. So she's got a couple questions here for you guys, and she'll be jumping in throughout. And so Courtney's first question for you guys, since we're going back and we're taking this retro, do you guys have any specific games from that PlayStation 1, N64, Saturn era? We're talking mid to late 90s. That you remember, any horror games in particular that resonated with you, or just positive memories of that era that you want to share? Tony, I know you're a huge retro gamer, so can we start with you on that question?
I'm going to start with Resident Evil 3 was actually the first one that I actually completed on PlayStation 1. How I got into the Resident Evil is that I remember I had some older cousins. I was like 8 years old, or probably even younger than that. and they were playing Resident Evil, the first one, and I thought it was just such an awesome idea of puzzle solving and survival horror. Eventually, I ended up playing Resident Evil 3, which is still one of my favorite games today.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I think it's hard to discuss this era of gaming and not talk about Resident Evil. Layla, I know you're a big fan.
Wait, I'm sorry.
David,
I'm
it's all
gonna
good.
piggyback right off of him.
Here, Tony, say your piece, and then we'll send it right over
so
to
Resident
Layla.
Evil 3 and Silent Hill 2. So.
I was gonna say Silent Hill too.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Thunder stolen from me as well.
You got. I mean, like these. I guess these are kind of expected to be all of our answers from that era. But Layla, what are you thinking specifically about this era of
definitely.
gaming?
When I was growing up, I actually watched my mom play Resident Evil, the first one, and I continued to watch her play, the other ones. And I personally played 4 on my own without any help. Like that was when I got the courage to do it. But actually, my tattoo is from Resident Evil 5. I have Chevelle Almar's tattoo to symbolize that. That's kind of the connection I had with me and my mom growing up playing video games with her. And Chevelle Almar was the first African American female to be introduced to the series. So I was bet that's my first tattoo. So
awesome.
Definitely Resident Evil and Silent Hill from back in the day.
Yeah, I remember actually getting Resident Evil 1 the day it came out, largely because my brother and his friends were like, I forgot how old I was. I must have been like 10 years old or something like that. But they were like, we got to get this game. And my birthday just so happened to be around with the game release. So they were like, they convinced me to ask my parents for it. And I actually didn't play much of it. I watched my brother and others play it. I'm pretty afraid of, if I can do a confessional here. Can we get a little show of hands about that? Like, how many people are openly admitting to the fact that you're terrified of a lot of horror games?
Silent Hill 2 for sure. That was
Devon, not necessarily. Okay.
I mean, it's weird because it's artificial fear. It's not real fear. It's not real fear.
Artificial.
Okay, Devon, we gotta have Professor Devon. You're about to learn.
Have I ever felt artificial fear?
Right. It's the difference. It's the difference between when if you're afraid of the dark and you don't want the light, and you're actually afraid of the dark, and then you have a jump scare. That's a moment scare. It doesn't really resonate with you. I don't know.
I mean, it gets me every single time.
Yeah, that's a good question. Legend, how do you feel about horror games in general? Any particular memories of games that
I have to be honest with you guys. I'm coming in fresh.
Yeah.
I'm coming in fresh. I never played any of those games that you guys are talking about. I've seen people play them, but I've never participated. It just wasn't.
Yeah, what's the reason?
Really, just wasn't my thing. It just, I don't know. It never enticed me. Back then, I wasn't thinking of. I didn't really play games a lot, to be honest. I've really started to do so within the last maybe 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of the history of stuff, I'm learning and I'm, just sort of ingesting.
History of gaming,
Yeah. That's what I find about indies so fascinating for me personally is that, it's just the history of how all of these games started and how it's basically the platform of everything. If you didn't have, every game was an indie, and depending on the views and how often it's played and the hype, I think maybe are the discussions of it. And that's what makes our jobs the coolest things ever, because we get to be those people to give those guys the hey, without us, some games wouldn't even be popular at all. Because you're watching people play the games that you're, so but horror. So all of these games that we played on Disc 1 was interesting for me. It was
cool. I love that because we all have different experiences in that regard, and it's different, ages overall. So we have different or where we entered kind of gaming, so to speak. So that's really fascinating, and I think
gaming gaps
or gaming what.
Or gaming gaps.
Yeah, exactly. And
that was in that 5-month period or 5-year period where I never heard of it.
Yeah, I mean that's a good example. Like for me, as like I got the PS1 right when it came out, and then I also got a PC shortly thereafter. And I got to be honest, as soon as I got a PC, like I like looked at consoles and I was like, "See you guys." Like I still play them every once in a while, but I was totally like jump on board like PC elitist. Like I was like playing all these games, and like the experiences were so next level. You know, people were playing like Turok and you're playing Quake and all this other stuff, and it just felt so different. The genres, real-time strategy, the point-and-click adventures. So I outside of, I played Resident Evil 1 a lot, but not necessarily as much Resident Evil 2 or 3 or Silent Hill. I played them a little bit, but I wasn't as fanatical about them.
Sorry.
No, please, Devon.
Yeah, so I watched a neighbor play Resident Evil 1 and I think 2. And I have friends that were pretty obsessed with Silent Hill, though I didn't quite see the obsession. I didn't quite care for it. But I think so. If I want to go into like the artificial fear, right? This is kind of still on topic, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned Turok 2: Seeds of Evil. So for me, what scared me the most was like the image of how those dinosaurs with the blasters actually looked. Mm. Now, I'd say that scared me more than like maybe SCP or like Amnesia of now or Resident Evil 2 or 1 of now, even though I was just watching someone play. That's that like weird like big dinosaur thing, like just how it looked, it's like burning image. It's like, oh, I ain't trying to look at that again. But yeah, I think that's my kind of experience with the horror, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
And I see Layla in the chat saying Outlast, which I'm not gonna lie, I didn't continue playing because I was so terrified by it. I'm just like, I'm not in the mood to be this terrified, to be honest. I don't know if Layla you finished that one or not, but
no.
That was Legend saying Outlast is amazing. Watching someone else play. Okay, yeah. That's the thing. Okay. That's the scary part. Okay, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we jump over?
Because I psych myself up. Like, you know you're playing a horror game, right? So you're expecting, like, the worst. You know? Mm-hmm. So every dark crevice, as soon as you have a gun, in my opinion, okay, as soon as a horror game, I'm shouting, I'm getting excited.
No, it's all good, please.
As soon as if you go into a game like that and they give you a weapon, right? Or you even get just a flashlight, you know something's going down. Like, flashlights involve batteries. Like, am I going to time this stuff? Like, am I going to have to, like, is this flashlight forever? You don't know what I do? What's the button to not accidentally turn the flashlight off? Like, as soon as something gives you a flashlight, you know something's going down. Or, you know, so like every crevice, you're just like, what? You know? And you know what's coming for you. Yeah. You're just, like, oversensitive to, like, sounds and things. Like, some games, you're just, as much as you think you're prepared for it, you're just not. Because then you're just, like, you're waiting.
Totally.
So you're tensed up, you know?
You're totally right about that. And that got me thinking about, if you all remember when Doom 3 was released, it was kind of infamous for the fact that it's set, like, you know, in the future with all this technological firepower, and yet you had to actively switch between a flashlight and your gun. Like, you couldn't have both out at once. And it's like, it was from a mechanical standpoint, it helped the horror experience because it disempowered you momentarily, right? And that was what kind of corridor Titan shooting was. You know, Doom was trying to adapt to a gaming world, a Halo, Call of Duty kind of gaming world of sorts. But it's interesting. King of the Nerds saying Doom 3 was fantastic. Definitely a bit different than all the other Dooms in that regard. Let's check out this trailer. Let's continue this conversation. Shout out again to Courtney. Thanks for the question. She'll be back soon with some more here. But let's real quick watch the trailer, which I actually love this trailer. I think the trailer is fantastic. This is the trailer for the Haunted PS1 demo disc. All right, let's check it out.
Hey kid.
Who? Me?
Yeah, you dummy. You wanna play some cool video games?
Yeah, I wanna play games.
These games will get your heart pumping. Demo Disc 2020 out now. Try them before they get ya. Hey kid.
So that, everyone, was the Haunted PS1 demo disc. I absolutely love that trailer. We should say this game is available right now on itch.io. Definitely recommend you all check it out. It has a really cool, they even have like kind of like a fake demo disc look to it. Just to be clear, because there is some confusion online about this is not an actual disc. This is a downloadable file with a ton of different demos from different developers, and some full games as well. It is 17 demos that were brought together earlier this year, and this isn't to be confused with another Itch Game Jam that was also a retro kind of PlayStation era aesthetic for Halloween. So this so happens just to be kind of very similar, but this was released earlier in February. First, guest, what do you guys think about the what do you think about that trailer there?
I thought it was like right out of the 90s. Like Patience had to explain to me that, I was like, oh no, this came out like in 2020.
Yeah.
I think they, with the whole commercial purple skeleton skull guy and the classically 90s, like with like the parted blonde hair, I was like, oh yeah, like this is a relic of its time. And Patience was just like, it was like, oh no, like this was released this year. Like they absolutely nailed, in my opinion,
nailed it.
Like, yeah, like I thought I was watching a incredibly, like, I thought that somebody found this from like a archivers, like I'm like people that just archive decades and media and decades, and I thought they just found this, and it was just a demo disc floating around like from like dumpster to dumpster, like a totally undiscovered,
a true haunted demo disc.
Yeah,
like Polybius, if anybody remembers that game. I hear
yeah, like, oh yeah, no, yeah, the mythical Polybius. Like this looks like something that you would get like as like a special from like Pizza Hut.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Shout out to demo discs. Like, how do you all have like as much of a place in your heart as I do? I literally have. I've never thrown away like a piece of gaming memorabilia. I have like boxes and boxes of PC Gamer demo discs and so many other different magazines, like archived in like in chronological order. There's something about a demo disc that we just don't have anymore. Isn't it something that unfortunately has been like lost due to time?
No, that can stay where it's at.
Oh, okay, Devon. I knew having Devon here would be hot takes, so let's hear it.
Demo discs can go. They're not needed anymore.
Let's hear why.
Because everything's digital. What do you need a demo disc for?
Because
a demo release would be a nice replacement. I would like.
That's the thing.
I'd say. I actually like the curation. I like the curation of different games. The idea of like, hey, I'm gonna play Spyro, and then I'm gonna play like Resident Evil, and then I'm gonna play something that when I was younger I didn't have the availability to buy just a bunch of games. So the idea is that you get a demo disc, you get like 10 different genres in one disc, and that was pretty dope.
That's cool, and I feel you on that. As somebody who couldn't play stuff, but now we have Game Pass, and we have many cheaper options to where a demo disc isn't necessary. It's literally nostalgia. It's nostalgia that costs money.
Well, one thing I can say is that specifically about this disc is that I like the curation of horror games into one single area. I think, and I'll talk about like later on in the video about like a little bit of feedback that I would give about that curation.
Mm-hmm.
But just the idea of having like 10 different games that have fit a certain theme, in a single area. Maybe not the physical disc, but maybe just 10 different games in a humble bundle. Yeah, we have bundles nowadays, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But I do agree. I do agree that the curation of how everything looks. I guess if I'm giving my take, I do agree that it definitely fits the theme. Though, if these games were developed like now, it's a bit of a conversation to where it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like why go back to that graphic style when I don't know. It just says something about the quality of what you're looking at. It's like why the reason why things advance. I don't know. It's a nostalgia thing. It's nostalgia for a reason. It's fine.
And I think what set it off of what he was just saying is that I guess demo discs back then are what bundles are today. So.
Ish. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm really big on like memorabilia. Like
Yeah.
I literally just pulled out my little GameCube game holder with all of my games still in it, and I kept it because it's like it's I don't know. It feels good to have those things and like hold them physically and be like, oh, I remember when I used to do this. I used to play this with so and
Yeah.
so, or like I don't. I'm big on having things like that. And I feel like that's another reason why we get like collector's edition stuff. Like we don't need we like to
Yeah.
have those things. We like to have those physical like trophies or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just something physical and nice to have for like movies or just something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
I
that's
mean,
something important. I know Layla, you're a big fan of like those like additional items that kind of are kind of world building or that
yes.
go along with it. So I totally feel you on that. Legend, for you, since you didn't play much games of this era, what was the experience for like for you like when you heard that we were going to be playing these games, when you started playing these
Well, when I
games?
first saw the intro, I thought to myself, "Whoa, what the hell am I getting myself into?"
Yeah.
You know, like what's this gonna be all about? Because as I said earlier, you know, as soon as you said haunted title, I was like, all right, I'm obviously, you know, haunted title. Like this is gonna be just interesting and different for me. And I was pleasantly surprised. And to Layla's point, it is about memorabilia. You know, people like that's what gamers do. That's why there's Funko Pops. You know, there wouldn't be all of this marketing, this huge marketing industry off that if it wasn't, you know, I think that it's people like having those imageries that they can reminisce upon.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like really cool because as I was playing it and people were coming into the channel, they were like, oh, you know, this reminds me of Resident Evil. And even I, you know, because I've seen people play these games, like, oh, this is kind of like Resident Evil-ish. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, that's cool, you know? And it does bring up really like nostalgic feelings.
For sure.
So it was even as a beginner, knowing people that have felt this way about these games, you know, kind of put me on sort of that like emotional level as well. You know, I was able to sort of like really enjoy myself because I've had people who've had really good experiences playing games that are like this, you know.
Yeah.
So that was cool for me. I liked it. Like
No, that's a great point.
I wrote down like stuff, like I made my list and I wrote down like the games, and I was like, oh, like okay. You know, this is pretty cool. Like, I liked it. It was definitely something that you mentioned disc 2. You know, I'm sure disc 2 is like this. It makes me excited to play. You know, it really does. It really does.
Yeah, and
Especially
we should
from an indie
say
aspect.
we primarily played a lot of games from disc 1, but I know our guests kind of played some other stuff as well. So I think between us all, we've kind of played everything in the discs themselves. There's not a formal disc 1 or disc 2, we should say. Once you launch the games, they're all there.
Like Scarlett has a point. Demos are cool because there were a few games and I was like, yeah, dude, this is not happening. Nope. And I moved on. You know, there's a few on my list. I was like, yeah, I'm never gonna play this again. Totally not worth it. Like.
Yeah, and shout out to everybody in this chat. Really appreciate y'all's participation and kind of going down this nostalgic vibe right here. Davon, I do want to hit you up back on one point about the for there not to be a need for demo discs. I think we all recognize, or at least I'll speak on my own behalf, is that we're not necessarily saying you got to go back to the physical media of that era, although it would be nice, like as we've talked about these collector's editions. But the whole idea of curation seems really important, especially as we're bombarded with more games than we could possibly imagine, that we could possibly play in one lifetime. The idea to have certain developers or collectives or publishers, whatever they may be, kind of centralize a lot of core content around a certain theme or a quality level and then release it out. And I had a lot of nostalgic. It hit me here when you're even just like cycling through the games. You see like the sprite 3D kind of things popping up. I really loved that vibe to it. I do have some issues with the games, and we're about to kind of go into that. But David, I think I'd at least hope that you'd consider the idea that maybe a curated set of demos, there's potential here to explore that we haven't seen much of.
Because I'm sorry, I don't want to go on this point,
no,
but
please.
because streamers exist and because content creators exist, demos cannot exist. You can't basically people already watch games and don't play them. When you have more demos, it basically encourages someone to look at this title. And speaking from a developer perspective, it encourages someone to look at this title, play it for a little bit, figure out that they don't want it, and then leave, which is fine. That's good. But we already, from a gamer perspective, our attention span has already basically dropped to like, I think 2 minutes or 1 minute and 50 seconds. And we already don't really enjoy the games that we get now. So it's basically like with me, when I played demos back in the day, that meant I didn't buy the game. Usually I got the demo, played it, didn't want the game, and then didn't buy it. And that's it. And it's actually worse now. And now you have pirating and stuff like that, at least from the PC perspective. So no, I mean, curation is good, and that's why some developers will try to do that. But basically, I can look at a game and I can see it, and I can see all of it almost in a playthrough of a session, or just watch someone play. And basically, I don't get everything that I got out of the game, but I got enough to where I'm like, yeah, I mean, straight. Like, if I want a game now, or at least for me personally, it's something that I actually really want. Whereas it's like, you can just kind of buy everything kind of willy-nilly. But if you had demos, you can, get it. It's basically, it allows for people to look at a game, see they didn't want it, and throw it away, instead of actually enjoying the game. And gamers, in my opinion, now don't really enjoy games like that. They just kind of go with the wave, or they go with what's popular and stuff like that. So no, demos actually, in my opinion, hurt developers more because it puts their product out there like that. So.
I think it does. So Mike, I actually have a question about that. I read an article somewhere where they said the reason why there aren't demos for downloadable games anymore is because specifically of the point he's making. The idea is that if you're playing the demo, there's no correlation that say that you'll actually buy the game. Have you heard anything like that? Like, it might actually have an inverse effect if you release a demo for a particular game.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And of course, like, it makes me think about the whole idea, a terminology that we just don't have anymore, which was shareware in the 90s, if you all remember that. I mean, a lot of times you would actually have the full game on a disc, right? Already, for example, I think some of the early 3D Realms and id Software work, the whole game was actually on those floppy disks already, and you had to unlock it by like paying and getting a code. Or it was just a way, the whole idea of shareware was literally you're sharing disk and the demos are passing around. And so it's as indie as you could possibly get. Of course, id Software is now huge and purchased by Bethesda, then purchased by Microsoft. But I think there's some merit to the idea that some games, depending on the genres and the content, people might focus on the demo and not necessarily go the full extent. But I don't fully agree with Devon that it is responsible in that way for a loss of sales, or for people to not go fully through. I mean, I guess that's a good question for Layla and Legend, since you guys are the most experienced
I can kind of see his
bunch.
point, to be honest, because a lot of times in a demo, you're not really giving a game a chance. A lot of times you can play a game and you can be pleasantly surprised. And it has to do with word of mouth. In our communities, indie specifically, we're tight knit, we're small. So the majority of the time I can go to someone and be like, hey, have you played this game? Or I've heard of someone playing it, which intrigues me to wanna, then play it, because that's my home. That's my safety. And I can see the point, because you're not, you're only given just like a tidbit. And without those people, I wouldn't want to play it. Therefore, I'm able to, purchase it. But if I did get just like a small, like, not given an opportunity, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to participate. If I haven't heard someone else has played it before, I'm not gonna, be interested really at all. And then that would drive down the market, because I'm not going to purchase this game to even like test it out to like wanna, So I can see how that could vary it. But again, our community is kind of small. I don't think it would hurt the market that much, but I do think it would not make the game as interested, and then the indie company fails.
Do you all
basically.
think maybe like free games were kind of an attempt to change this? I mean, Bobby, like we've now entered an era where every game on mobile or most games, you get it, it's free, and then you buy the content afterward. Could one
Right,
argue
yeah.
that has in some ways replaced the demo, where you're essentially providing the full game and then additional experiences are monetized on top of that?
right, or like grinding through. You're either going because I know a big thing now is like you have to see a developer promise that like, oh no, you don't have to spend money. You can still beat this game without spending any money.
Mm-hmm.
It's that your player experience will probably suffer, or the developer is never intended for you to play the entire thing for free. So you're probably going to get honestly almost a lackluster experience of a game because you might be strapped for cash. And when I consider it, I really think that because it's kind of always been a problem. Game developers are still working on the formula for how can we do what we love and afford to pay for a roof over our heads, or to pay for food. And I think that we've seen trends, demo discs, shareware, and now pay to play. EA got just filleted by the gaming community for trying some new things that did amount to pay to win. So I don't think that that's the solution. I don't think that anyone's hit the perfect resolution yet, and I hope that we see that and I hope that I see that in my lifetime, because it'll be really cool to see people doing what they love and making making a living, if not more, and actually being able to like succeed. Because right now I feel like it's pretty daunting to be a game developer, when you consider like hey, are you going to be able to live and be a game developer?
Sure.
I feel like there are like a lot of like young, like early 20 somethings that are just so willing to like, I will eat bananas and water to be able to make it happen. And I feel like that work is kind of abused by a lot of gaming companies, just because like there's that problem hasn't been solved yet. And I'm really interested on like keeping tabs on it, because I wish I had more input there, but I really want it for our creatives and our content creators out there, because I think that they more than deserve it. So like,
great point.
I'm no stranger to torrenting, but I still won't torrent a game.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well, without you guys, I don't have content. I don't have a job basically without you. So it's sort of that give and take balance. Do I want to make a pay to play game because I can entice people to do it and tell them, oh no, it's not going to be, whatever, and then eventually you're slowly making like these microtransactions. After a while, the hidden fees.
Right.
Fees of a game, so I think it's hard to balance, giving a game out for free, doing a demo, getting people to want to play your game, because you need those content creators to be interested enough to want to stream your games, to talk about it, because our community is so tight knit, so it's I don't know, is hand to mouth, is that the phrase that I'm looking for? I don't know if that's the right one, but it's just funny how this industry works. As a developer, you don't want to give up your creativity. You want to find that balance to please us and be able to, feed yourselves and promote your game.
I think that's one of the reasons behind
time,
compiling all of these experiences together is they may get lost in the shuffle otherwise, right? If you have all of these games individually released, there's a million games released on itch and Steam and every other platform and storefront imaginable. That I think they really did a good job with a novel approach to be able to draw attention, right? They said, let's compile all these experiences that share a mid to late 90s aesthetic as well as some gameplay styles, And the area that I will criticize, and if everybody who watches this knows, I'm always super positive as I can be about a lot of things. I will say I feel like this set of demos is a little too stuck from a gameplay standpoint in
Really?
in the 90s.
What do you mean it's too stuck? Oh, too stuck in the 90s.
Well, yeah, okay.
I think the aesthetics, for the most part, I'm really pleased with the aesthetics. Like, I think they did a really good job nailing that era. Although some of these are like borderline PS2 era graphics, I would say.
The graphics were everything I thought they would be.
Yeah.
They were just everything I thought they would be. It was perfect.
I
thought
think
it was
the
perfect.
gameplay stuck a little bit too much to... the gameplay was a little stuck in 1996. Am I the only one who feels
now we're
that?
talking about... No. The gameplay and stuff in the games were fine with me. The curating of bringing all the games together. The idea is that not all of the games had controller support. In fact, some of the games... I didn't even know what to do. Like, I didn't even know, what keyboard. I used to trial and error, man.
Yeah.
So I think there was actually a section in the game, in the demo, where you can play the game, go back, or there was like a background or something like that. Something at the last
description,
option.
yeah.
It would have been great if they would have put more than just the one-liner that they put in there. Maybe like, hey, this is how you play this game.
Right? Yes.
Controls.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
For Halloween Disc 2020, it wasn't very 2020. It was just like 90s. It was too much. If you're gonna do a 2020, the least you could do is make it accessible for those of us that, because there was a keyboard, but I was like, one game in particular, I have it in my notes. I have to look it over.
I know which one you're gonna say.
I was just like, girl, I just want to.
Are you talking about Dead Heat?
Yeah, that one. And then the weird, like, that puzzle thing where you have to make this what is this? You have to, like, hold on with your left mouse, and then you gotta move in, and then you had to do this, and I was just
so that's my point. Like,
this is not happening for me.
That's the issue I have with this. Is it's like, it's one thing. I love the idea. It's
weird.
Totally cool to go back to that aesthetic. I think it's only natural that we went back to that, right? We all lived through this era where there was a really strong retro nostalgic vibe for especially 8-bit, 16-bit pixel art. And then it was only natural that as we're getting older, younger people especially, but our generation as well, would have this nostalgic feeling for low fidelity, lo-fi polygon of the mid to late 90s, especially the 64 PS1 Saturn era. I got a couple things I'll say about that era. One, I think in general, not just this demo disc, that era I think is one of the hardest to go back to. Right? Like, if I want to go and play Chrono Trigger right now on Super Nintendo, it holds up super solid. But if I go back, even to some of these beloved games that we love, right? Even Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, whatever you go back and we're just like, what that game aspired to be. It aspired to be as realistic, and it was as realistic as it could be at the time. It looks blocky and a little ugly. There's that meme. Did you guys see that Final Fantasy VIII meme? That's like the girl tells the main character how beautiful he is, and then like the meme zooms in and shows like pixelated like face, right?
Yeah, that.
So it's not exactly the aesthetic as much as the gameplay to me is stuck in, like, for many of these experiences is too stuck to 1996, and it's like, no, we can apply.
I can jump in.
Let's do it. Jump in.
I got two pieces of feedback just for the curation of the physical demo. It has nothing to do with the physical games, but the actual demo of itself. It would have been really awesome. How do you have a PlayStation demo with not all the games supporting controller support? I would say that's sort of odd. So, or at least that took me back. So, I would say the first thing you could do is just, I use XPatter, not to sit there and evangelize it, but just have XPatter profiles inside the zip folder that you included in it. How do we not know the controls, or even really just a one-liner of what the game's about? Now, mind you, I went onto the game page in Twitch.io. If you click the different links, some links bring you to the website that can be like, oh, okay, I can figure out how to play this game. Some of them brings you to, like, the Twitter page. I'm like, I don't know how the heck I'm supposed to get the controls from the Twitter page. But if they had some kind of, like, text files, just a folder with some text files of, like, hey, here are the controls, or some XPatter profiles, that would have significantly helped out in the experience of the actual demo, because you jump from game to game to game, and they operate completely different from each other. And like I said, some don't have controller support, some do, and some of them, some of them were intuitive, like, hey, just walk forward and explore. And then some of them were like, man, I don't really know what to do in this game.
Yeah, no, excellent points there. And let me read a couple comments here from the chat.
Oh,
Appreciate everything you all are saying here. King of the Nerds saying, I still remember the first time I played Half-Life 2 and having to go through Ravenholm scares me thinking about it. Yes, Ravenholm, masterful game design for sure. One of the most memorable parts of Half-Life 2 for sure. Scarlet saying, I would buy games I liked from the demo. It helped me actually buy the games. Yeah, appreciate that. Devon, you can argue with Scarlet in the chat right there. King of the Nerds saying the 90s were the best. Amar saying you got to read the manual like back in the days, Tony. And Bobby here saying, and write down cheat codes in the notes section in the back. Yeah, I mean, that's also a part of, there's a lot of things we've kind of lost from this era. And I think, I mean, Layla was talking about that earlier when we're talking about like the physical editions, right? It's the same thing, I think, with like vinyl or whatever it may be. Having something like tangible in hand not only brings a lot of memories with it, but it also brings an experience where you had to physically go somewhere to buy it, right? I mean, it's funny to think about the fact, like, I used to get on my landline to call Blockbuster to see if they had the latest game.
They had the games you could rent, yeah.
And Blockbuster's not around. Landlines are essentially gone.
Yeah.
Like, our life has changed, so a lot of people don't even remember the idea of going through a game manual, going through a demo disc.
Yes.
And a lot of these things are, okay, yeah, we're advancing. Maybe to Daddy Devon's point over there, we might be moving beyond, but there's some nostalgia lost in the mix.
There was two sessions ago we played something called like Castle Mice or Mice Mages, or it was a
Micro Mages.
Micro Mages, where it actually had an instruction booklet. And yeah, can you remember the last time you physically bought a game that had an instruction booklet that wasn't like a special edition or something like that? It's like some of these publishers, like, why not just create a PDF and just post it on your website? You know, on the back of the thing, hey, for instructions or for greater detail. I understand it costs us money to actually provide those things in there. But man, it would be so awesome if game developers now would just put like a PDF, you know, just throw a PDF on a website and just say like, hey, so when I go visit your website, now I can see the game, I can see the controls, and I get that nostalgia feeling of like, oh, this is a manual, even though it's not.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we get a little bit of that as content creators. We'll get like the media folder, so we'll have like PDF, and sometimes it'll have like the instructions to it. Other times it doesn't. It's mostly just like pictures you can use to tweet out and things like that, or little clips that you can use, you know, to help promote the game if you're doing something like early beta or, you know, NDA. But but I would like it in the game itself. You know, I think having that convenience in some of the games, in this especially, and I want to point out earlier too, is that discs are interesting, this one especially, because when you do buy the physical copy and there are games in there that you're not going to like, you know, you're forced to buy this thing if you have no choice, because the games that you do enjoy are on there too. So you're kind of like stuck with like half good stuff. Like, what if you only like one game, you know? So you have to think about like, you know, is this something that I really want to invest in if it's not considered memorabilia to you, you know?
Yeah,
so I'm going to take it all the way back, because we went over a lot of stuff just now. But going back to the demo situation, I personally, as a gamer, I don't watch too many trailers. I don't really watch too much gameplay or anything before I buy it. Like, I buy a game because I'm interested in it and I play it. Like, it is what it is. I feel like that's a risk to take as a gamer. Is you
do
buy
the full plunge.
Yeah, and you go through the gameplay and you go through the game and you either like it or you don't. So the whole demo situation, I can say that when I did play demos back in the day, I most of the time didn't buy the game. That's just me personally, because I would go back and I would just play it through the demo. Like, it's just something that I did. Now, as far as so I can see where Devon's coming from in that aspect, because I personally I didn't. That was me playing to me as a kid. That was the game for me. Like, that's what I'm gonna play.
Yeah.
So as far and for any other games that I actually got, I didn't know if I was gonna like it or not. It looked cool, so I bought it and then I played through it. Now, going and covering the having a better having a substitution for that. I don't know if everybody agrees with this, which is fine, but I think that isn't that essentially what we're doing with like Game Pass, because you're paying for a membership and you're getting these games and you're playing these games
yeah, good
with
point.
that subscription,
Yeah.
and then if that game is pulled off of the Game Pass deal, then you're stuck with this save file and you need to buy, and then you have to buy the game if you want to continue to play it.
Yeah.
So you're essentially
Good
paying for that
point.
subscription and playing these
Mhm.
games, and if they're taken off, then you have to buy it if you want to continue to play.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great
It
point.
also doesn't make the demo experience totally fruitless because you've made progress.
Yes.
It's just
Mhm.
you know you've been kind of walled in how much you can do before you spend money, which is buying the game. So I think that that's a really compelling argument, and I think that it's fair to both the end user, the gamers, as well as the game developers too, because everybody's getting a fair shot. In terms of the, I'm going to try to unite two talking points together. Let's see how this goes. In the argument of like having physical media and with the demo experience, I remember 10 years ago, and I'll let you know why I know it's that long ago at the end. But a little game called Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game, was released on Xbox 360 and I think PlayStation Network.
Yep.
That was the last demo that I remember playing. You could only play level 1, and I loved it. I loved the music. I loved the brawler fighting style. I loved, of course, that world. But I was cash strapped and broke at the time, and I would just play it on my 360. And by the time I leveled up in life, and I was actually able to spend money on things that I wasn't just gifted by mom. That game was pulled off the network. Like
Yep.
you couldn't. The only thing that you could do.
Infamously so. Yep.
Yeah, the only option I had was to either buy an Xbox 360, which I already had, but I would be buying it expressly because the seller said it has Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game,
attached to the
on it.
username. Yeah.
And so, and now, you've got the PlayStation 5, where you've got a optical drive in it, or you could go full-on cloud computing, and I've got friends who say, I'm going to spend money on the optical drive because what if one of my favorite games is just good, the support for it ends and they just yank it off the network.
Interesting point. And we should say that Ubisoft is bringing back, if you guys saw the recent announcement, I think 3 weeks ago, that Scott Pilgrim, the game is coming back. So you'll be able to get that fully, and
on the Switch, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think in several different platforms. And we should also give another shout out to Microsoft, who's like really pushed forward backwards compatibility. I don't know if you guys have seen the reports about how well 360 games, Xbox 360 games are running on the new Series S and X. It sounds astounding how well they've done emulation, or I guess in some cases natively supporting things through. It's hard to say, I guess. I don't know their whole background.
I got a little thing to say about that. Not to sound like a troll or whatever like that. One thing I would say, it's easy to spread peanut butter on toast with a machete, right? So like when you have the Xbox Series X, man, I'm surprised like the games don't just jump out and just slap you or something. It's easy to do that when it's such an overpowered hardware playing last and stuff. That was the comment that I made on another video. But yeah.
Well, that's interesting you say that, and Davon, I'll bring you in here because I know you were about to say something. Is that even with all this firepower or the technological firepower these systems have, it's still hard to emulate a lot of these old experiences. I mean, there's been notorious issues with emulating games on very specific hardware, right? I mean, PS3 was notoriously difficult to work on, the cell technology, all that stuff. But like even these games, I had a couple issues with some of these games on this demo disc. I mean, they look like they're 25 years old, but they're obviously made in the modern era, and so there could be some optimization components there. So kudos.
I
to
scared
anybody
myself
who can get
worse that way. I think, like I was saying earlier, and you know, we were testing stuff out. Because it was so dark, the optics were so different compared to what you're used to now, that I was like, you know,
And that's a good point, because a lot of that, I mean, the horror genre lends itself to low fidelity because of, like, famously, like, even in Silent Hill, like, if you have mist or other components of darkness, you can actually save some power, some CPU and RAM usage there, just by shrouding things away. Davon, I know you were gonna jump in here with something. What you got, my friend?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to fix a bunch of stuff. But yeah, so with these games specifically, right? So that's where my problem with nostalgia kind of comes in. Because like I tried to play a few of them, right? And I just tried to load the exe from the zip. And I went in and I saw the little menu selection, whatever, and I would try to play honestly any of them, and it would take a little bit to load. And it was my mistake, and that's my fault, but I would like press enter a few times, and then like a bunch of clients would show up. That's kind of a loading thing, and that's a bit of a problem. But again, if you're trying to go like that authentic, that's my issue. My issue is I'm glad they did that, because I'm glad they did that for the nostalgia purpose. And again, from a legacy perspective, I'm glad other people can kind of see that era from a different lens, from like a newer lens, I'd say. But at the same time, you go that legacy, you get legacy problems. It's not a thing to where like you go that legacy and everything's fixed just because we have modern technology. It's not necessarily like that. There's certain things that you do have to do the same way. But
I think part of that was actually the fact that it was just difficult to do a loader for all of them in the game itself. I think that was more so just when you're doing a disc. You have one general launcher, and then you have to launch the game separately. Otherwise, you'd have to have all of that content built into one executable file.
If you think about how Blizzard does their launchers, I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with that, because like Blizzard, you launch everything in one launcher.
Yeah, this is also an indie demo disc from a bunch of different projects.
Yeah,
but I hear you. I hear you on this.
Yeah, sure. It's again like, and I like the aesthetic. It's the one with the anime character, looks like, in the front. I don't remember the name.
Was that the Dead Heat one?
Yeah, I think that was Dead Heat. I really did like it a little bit, but I don't know. It's just, for me personally, like, they were fun to play, but it brings up legacy issues, and it's like, do I really? What you were talking about earlier, as far as going back to games, and then it's kind of hard to go back to them.
Yeah. Some
games, they kind of stand the test of time, because even if you play them like 10 years later, it's not that they're still good games. It's just that for some, either it's nostalgia, or it's the fact that the game does hold its own weight, to where I could play this game 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. But it's kind of rare that those games exist. And I don't really know the recipe for a game like that to even really be a thing. Nostalgia is very strong, to where, tank controls exist, and I'll still endure the tank controls just so I can run from Nemesis again.
Yeah, so that's a really good point there. Yeah, I feel you on that. I mean, should we start discussing some specific games here? Like, were there any standouts to you all? And we should say some of these games they're labeled demos. Some of them are in the works to actually be full-on products to be sold. Some of them, we should say, are full experiences. They're just so short that they're just labeled as a demo, right? Some of these are 5-10 minute experiences. So I'd love to hear from each of you, since we all played slightly different varieties of games. Like, what games like stood out to you for whatever reason? Just whatever game stood out, for good or bad. Whoever wants to jump in here.
So one of the games that I played was that I thought it was one of the good ones to start off with, because I do get so scared playing these games. Where is it? It was the one with the teeth. It was so weird.
Yes, the teeth at the end. It was
yes,
Old to the Moon? Or Insomnia.
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 Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Insomnia was like that's the ones that wasn't really developed all the way. I guess it's in the works because they were just small clips that were going
See,
on.
I thought it was the full game. Actually, I thought it was
think
like a full
I-
short
It said
experience.
it was the guy's dream.
Yeah, they were dreams. I guess it was just weird because nothing really. There was no like end result in them, so I didn't know if they
There
were just
wasn't,
in
nah.
the works or something. Because
Nah.
the first one is you just go and you sit down by the guy and he's like, I can control where this train's
Yeah.
going, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. And then it was like next scene. I was like, does this have anything to do with the first? Okay. And then that one actually did make me jump, the teeth one. Because
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
The
That
teeth like
was
breaking
gross.
apart on each
That
other.
was, I
Yeah, that was
hate
pretty
teeth.
creepy.
I hate teeth. I hate it. I think they're gross. They're just disgusting. Like I hate teeth. Like I hate them. They're gross. Like almost as bad as I hate feet. Like I just
But what-
unless they're baby feet. Unless they're baby feet. Like I'm cool with that.
The
Yeah.
horror game
I
for
would rub a
legends.
baby's
Yeah.
foot all over my face. Like I don't care.
Episodes in that
Yeah.
in that game was you go into this room. It was like someone was murdered in this room. It's like, the house
Yeah,
is
yeah.
haunted. It's a haunted house, and I was like, I can't. This is great right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Like,
psyched me
like-
up though, because I was like, what am I doing wrong?
They made me
Yeah,
laugh.
I think
pretty much.
yeah, there's was it something that was actually pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a weird chopped up 5 different dreams, and I listed all of them out. But there's certain games that I want to pinpoint out that had a theme to it that I was actually thoroughly impressed by. The idea that it's not just the jump scares or it's not just the story. The environment is what makes this
Yeah.
game interesting. Like there's some games in there that are like some trippy, Insomnia being one of them, or Insomnia or whatever.
Insomnia.
Killer
yeah.
One of
Bees for me.
Yeah, Killer
Killer
Bees.
Bees for
Another
me.
one,
I was like, whoa. What
Oh
are
to
those
the
weird
Moon.
beehive people doing?
Oh
Are they
to the
soldier
Moon.
bees? Were they workers? Like what's going on? You know? I
Oh
was
to the
so
Moon was a game where it's like the moon eclipsed, and then when it eclipsed, it became like a Silent Hill type of thing. Like you would go in and out of the second place, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just really weird. But I love these games. So someone was like the Castle game. Was it Snowy Castle? Ode to the Moon, Insomnio. Those were like my favorite games on the demo disc because they explored the thing that it wasn't scary, but man, it was some trippy systems, trippy sceneries, you know, and that you can't do that in a movie. You can't do that in a movie. You can't really describe that too much in a book where you have the environments completely change on you.
Yeah.
And I bet it's probably really hard to do in a game.
Yeah. Can we talk about that piece real quick? Because I think this is an absolute instance where games, I think, have an upper hand in a specific genre. I think games, you can make experience. I'm an evangelist for games in all forms, but I think games have a unique way of communicating tension and fear and horror. More so than I see Layla nodding there. I mean, what is it about it? Can we break that down a bit? Like, what is it about games? I can think of a number of things, but I'd like to toss this over to you all first, that are able to evoke such fear and horror.
My thing is that you're in control.
Yes.
Like in a movie, you're watching a movie. Like you have nothing to do with what's going on, and you're just
passive.
there to watch.
Mhm.
And the same thing with the book. You're there just to read, and try to visualize what's going on. In a game, which I personally, when I play a game, I feel like that is my real life that I'm running around with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm
I
getting
agree.
shot, I'm screaming like I'm getting shot.
Mhm.
Games are just interactive. And they're able to tell a story in a way that you are feeling everything that's going on because you're in control. And
Absolutely.
that's why I've loved being able to play the games that you set up for us, because I would have never played as many visual novels as I have if had I not been here on Indie Game Club, because it just wasn't something that I was into until I've continued to.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, did we lose her?
No.
No,
Layla.
did it? Oh man, I thought she was posing for us.
This
Selfie.
This is our
Layla.
Layla GameStop meme. Layla, we lost you.
All the way to Discord. What is this?
Sorry, Layla. We heard you right after you were talking about the visual novels, and then it cut off right there.
Right.
Okay, am I back now?
You're good, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, so just you're able to interact and you're in control of what's going on, whether you're making decisions, whether you're physically walking around trying to figure out whatever is going on in the story or in the game. And I think that's where the tension, the fear, the anxiety, all that stuff comes into play, because you are solely responsible for what happens in this game.
Yeah, totally agree.
Perspective, because you're, a lot of times when you're watching a movie, like you said, you don't have any control. You're yelling at them, but they can't hear you. They're not doing what you're trying to. They're not listening.
They're still gonna go in that room, no
right?
matter
Much like children.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't touch that. What are you doing? He's right behind you.
Yeah.
You're breathing too
That was
loud,
what was so fun about Until Dawn too, because it felt like you were
Yeah.
watching a horror movie and yet had some level
And
of
games
control.
can be like that too. You have that immersion, because then I find myself, oh my god, like when you play Dead by Daylight, oh, girl, if you stop stomping around, it's your character. You're like, I'm pretty like, why are you huffing and puffing? Like, shh.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's so immersive. It's so intense, and she's right. It's that sense of control that you get, but you're still panicking because you have that level of that anxiety for it. It's good.
Yeah, we got a lot of amazing comments in the chat that I'll get to in just a moment. I know Devon wanted to jump in here,
and I need to stop trying to interrupt people. I need to.
No, it's all good. I'm glad how everybody's like, this is an awesome conversation.
Yeah. So Heartworm, right? So that was one of the games I
describe it a bit just so everybody gets an idea.
Was that disc 1 or disc 2? Heartworm.
Heartworm was disc 1. Heartworm was the probably the most straightforward of the kind of matching Resident Evil style, I would say, of the bunch.
Gotcha.
Tank control, same too. Yep.
Yeah.
So my thing is I think it depends on the type of gamer that you are, right? Because like me, I'm very dispassionate, so that's why the horror genre doesn't. It's whatever.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that, like, we had just a quick story. I sat down and I played Amnesia when it came out at a party, and everybody was getting freaked out, and everybody was scared, and we were just passing the control. We were basically passing a controller around, in the dark, and it was cute, adorable, but they just left the controller at me because I just played the game, because it was like just jump scares. You can look at the walls cave in. That's nice. Like, it's not. It depends. So what I mean by dispassionate is, are
you just trying to flex on us that we're a bunch of fraidy cats and you're not?
I'm not flexing.
Because I'm not gonna lie, Amnesia had me terrified.
There's a duality.
I haven't finished playing that, to be honest. That thing started crawling around in the dark, and I was out.
Yeah,
I was like, later.
Absolutely.
Goodbye.
There's a bit of a duality, right? So actual horror movies, right? I'm scared deathly of them. Like I couldn't watch Final Destination. Oh no. I was watching what is it? Worm, Human Centipede. That's it. The first one. I was watching it with a few friends. And I crept in my shirt and tried to hide. I was trying to be low key, trying to watch. So I was like,
that should not be your starter horror film.
It wasn't a starter.
I hate movies like that.
It definitely.
Those are not friends. They're toxic, and you need to leave them.
No. There's a whole lot of background with that. We were watching bad B movies, and that's one of them that was there. That was maybe a few years ago. It was 5 years ago. Cool. So no, that was the whole thing. But I've always been kind of afraid of horror movies, and I think a lot of it is the kind of lack of control, but it's kind of a thing to where it's I just kind of don't want to see it. But then when you go from a video game perspective, at least from my perspective, I know a good bit about video games, so if I'm thinking mechanically what's going to happen, it's kind of the same duality as someone who watches horror movies all the time, and they see this thing obviously being a thing, and they're like, yep, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. They're right 100% of the time. And for them, a horror movie...
Like a formula.
Right, exactly. So a horror movie for them is just, oh, this is nice, I like the execution, whatever. Whereas for me, it's yo, that was mad scary. That was disgusting. How can you watch this? But that's what I mean by kind of dispassionate, because with a game, I just break it down kind of immediately, and it's just So when I played this, that's probably the reason why I kind of gravitated towards it, because it was very familiar. Admittingly, I didn't play too many of them, kind of because of that. But it's just, that's the thing. With me, when I play, Dead by Daylight's a good example. With Dead by Daylight, I just trying to win. Ain't nothing scaring me. It's just literally trying to win. Like, it is what it is.
Well, Dead
Like,
by Daylight's a bit unique though, because it's like you know what you're going into. You know you're going in for a set amount of time for a multiplayer match, and that you're gonna kind of go back into the experience. I think it's a little bit
gamified.
Yeah, and I think it's a little
then
bit.
you gotta pay attention too, because your heart starts racing, and then you're breathing
Sure,
hard.
I'm
and
definitely
then you
not
have
saying
to,
it's. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm definitely not saying Dead by Daylight's not scary at all. What I am saying though is you have an idea of what the experience is going to be.
Yeah.
Because
it makes
each
it
session is
predictable.
going to be the
Makes the jump
same.
scares funny.
Yeah, versus like a game like Amnesia,
Yeah.
when you're walking down a staircase and you've never played the game before or watched anybody play it, you're just like, holy shit, what's going to happen next, right? You know, what did I just see something right? You know what I mean? So that's.
If that's the thing with Amnesia, there was only so much that could happen. It wasn't that much, and it was all kind of the same kind of
True. And Amnesia is a
scale.
little difficult to. The example with Amnesia is a little difficult because I don't know if I should to spoil this, but in Amnesia, the monsters actually can't hurt you, and that's something no one really knows or thinks about.
Spoiler alert! La.
I was like, well, never playing that one now.
Well, no, it's maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's been like analyzed.
No, I'm gonna play.
My fault, people. I shouldn't have said that. That's at least part one, but it's a
To
famous.
me, it doesn't matter because there's still
Yes.
something in the dark crawling around with the potential of and I have to like get out of this maze thing, and I'm
Exactly.
panicking. I can hear it behind me. Like, yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah, no, I only say that because it's like a well-studied like example because of how famous the game is. My apologies for spoiling that, but I will say at this point how long the game's been around. There's plenty of videos analyzing this mechanic, how well they've done terror with the fact that the monsters don't actually they pursue you, but it's not like game ending, so to speak. And anyway, you'll look at that. Let me bust out some of these comments and we'll continue this a little bit more here. So a few things. We have Legend of the Star right here. I'll read you guys' comments. I appreciate you guys participating in the chat as well. So you'd rather download than purchase a disc, but you would if the game if you truly enjoyed it. Let's see. Tony's saying, as a big retro gamer, I highly agree the 32-bit era is always hard to go back to visually. The Mage, shout out to the Mage, asking us, have you heard of Puppet Combo? Puppet Combo does PS1 style horror games that might really catch your eye if you enjoy the haunted PS1 demo disc. Thanks for that recommendation. Actually, right when you typed that into the chat, I opened up a second window and looked at it. That looks really cool. Definitely would love to check more about that. Darth Sebulba saying, I disagree with that. I think Darth Sebulba was specifically talking about the empowerment piece or the disempowerment piece that Layla was talking about. I disagree with that about books. I read as the point of view I read as the point of view of the characters and get to experience what they do. And Layla is saying that's true. I agree with that. Perspective is different for everyone, which I think is definitely important to think about. And Tony saying, shout out for putting me up on Puppet Combo. Definitely going to dive deeper into that site. Well, yeah, let's talk a bit more about that sort of thing. So from what I'm hearing, as far as like what the kind of the hallmarks of what makes a good horror game, and I guess what emphasizes what games can do that other mediums can't, is by empowering the player or disempowering the player, you create tension.
Immersing them.
Right? I mean, that's what Resident Evil was so famous for. And we should always give a shout out to Alone in the Dark, I should say, which Alone in the Dark is always lost in the shuffle. I'm talking the OG trilogy, Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, that's old school.
Alone in the Dark is actually large. No. It was PC. It was PC, mid-90s PC, and it came out before Resident Evil, but Resident Evil gets all the credit. Although if you look at Alone in the Dark, tank controls, fixed cameras, in a haunted, like in a scary mansion, it's oftentimes forgotten as part of the conversation. When I'm quite certain that the people who actually created Resident Evil, even it said openly that they weren't hiding this, that they were inspired by Alone in the Dark as well, partly inspired by it at least. So shout out to them for that. But the disempowerment, the loneliness. Right, the fact that you're alone in a lot of these games, I think, creates a lot of the tension. Anything else you guys can think of from this era that that helps make games of this variety so scary?
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Go for it, Layla.
Two of us actually have to make a bathroom break, but
Yeah, go for it. Do your thing. Do your thing. Layla,
I'll be quick.
Layla, and then Devon.
So I think that with what Darth was saying is that after the comment that I made about everyone has his perspective is different. I don't play games so analytically, or I don't play it so like I don't read into it as much as I'm just solely just playing just to enjoy and just to like see what's just test it out, try it out, and just play through the game. So I don't really look at games in a in that sense of like digging real deep into the build of it and like the comparisons of it, that type of genre. So as opposed to maybe Davon might look at it in that aspect. So it's good to have different perspectives and good to have different game styles as well. And it's also great that we're able to come together and talk about it in this way because not everyone plays the same way. Not everybody is into the same type of thing, or it's good to get the perspective of different game styles as well. So
no, I totally feel you on that.
Definitely agree.
For sure. Davon, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, I guess answering your question, the environment's kind of important, and kind of how it looks back then. Well, okay, environment's the wrong word. I'd say the fact that everything, like when you're looking in a corridor and you're like, what is that? I don't know what it is. Like, and then it's because of how the graphics are. I think that's kind of important, but it's cute. It's kind of interesting because on the inverse, when things look real, like if you're playing Resident Evil now, right? And you look in a corridor and you're like, I know what that is. It definitely looks like what it is, but now it's just the lighting is so weird and good that, I'm looking in the dark and I'm like, like you're doing that like it's like it's real. Like you're doing that like, it's like 12 o'clock at midnight. You're trying to get something to eat and then you hear some loud crash and you're like, looking around like, so like back then those graphics are just like, I don't know what this is, this may be this, it's kind of has that feel. And then now it's like
there was more up to the imagination,
right? Yeah, both actually do that. I think back then it did it more, but I think now it's more of a thing to where you still have imagination, but it's actually a little bit more paranoia / fear driven because you know what it is, but you're like, I don't really know. And I think that's kind of important to distinguish the two. I definitely think what you're saying is correct, that back then, because the graphic fidelity wasn't the way it was, you could actually, you look at it and be like, I don't know what this is, so I'm going to think about, all the possible negative things it could be or bad things. But now it's a bit different. So.
That's a really interesting point because as I'm watching the video and I see Patience there and playing Heartworm in the background and thinking about it, looking back at this resurgence, I guess, and kind of this lo-fi polygon horror. I think some people have suggested that it's because of games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and just the nostalgia for those specific games. I think that's part of it, but I think it's also because there is something about, to Davon, to your point, about this aesthetic that allows people to make things more imaginative in a sense that you have no idea what's lurking. It's a little hard to kind of see things. The monster designs can be a little bit more unique and you're not as criticized for how realistic it necessarily is. You can also do a lot of visual effects. Like my question to you all is like, why is it creepy to have like VHS tapes or like this aesthetic or like lo-fi pixelation? Like what is it about aged technologies that make us kind of like freak out a little bit?
Back then, things weren't easily explainable. Whereas now in 2020, you can almost, explain anything away. But back then, when VHSs were around, you're like, man, I'm not really sure how that image came in the background. Okay. I'm not sure how someone could have did that. But if it was a DVD, you're like, yeah, man, we got green screens and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good
It wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't popular. You know what I mean? Yeah. Retro wouldn't be a whole category in and of itself, with specific speed runs and a really deep base if it wasn't if it wasn't a thing, if people didn't love it, if they didn't enjoy it. And I think that's why this disc was kind of interesting to me because, it's 2020. Like someone purposefully Like, did it to where it just sort of brings back that because people love it. I mean, it wouldn't be a big thing if there wouldn't. I mean, Tony plays retro games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't play it if it's something
People
that
love it, but it's still
you kind of want to
niche.
question, you want to look into,
Sure.
and people focus on that, preferably than today's games, because it's so predictable, because the graphics are so clean. You can kind of that's what makes like shooter games. You can kind of see you can see someone peeping when you're playing COD. You can see that. But in a retro game, you wouldn't be able to. So I think it's that nice feeling of surprise that you don't find as easily nowadays with the games that are out now.
Good points. Yeah, Davon, I heard you were going to jump in. No, please.
I need to stop trying to interrupt you.
No, it's hard. It's hard. This is how we all.
Okay.
This is how it all flows.
Yeah.
Jump in.
So the thing about fear, artificial fear, whatever, right? So permadeath in a lot of different games, right? That's the type of fear that I would want to see more in games in general, but not necessarily horror games. Because for horror games, the whole point is kind of using the trope of horror to, make a game, basically. But so think about like any game that you play, like an RPG, right? And like Final Fantasy VII, the new one. Think about if one of those characters, like you're playing through and all of a sudden, you go into combat, and if they died, you cannot resurrect them. They're actually dead, right? That's actual fear. That's actual, like, I'm going to change my whole gameplay style. I'm going to change up, how I'm actually doing things so this person lives. That's the type of fear. That's the type of fear that I enjoy. Like, that's the type of fear. That's the masochist in me. That's like, I'm gonna play these types of games because now this is something. I'll use a game that is examples like XCOM 2 or any game that has permadeath, right?
Yeah, Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem's a good one too. Fire Emblem, let me go over that one because Fire Emblem's a better example. So, Layla, you talked about visual novels, right? I don't know if you played Fire Emblem at all, any of them, honestly. But in Fire Emblem, it's more or less like almost all of them per se. They're more like dating sims, but it's like a dating sim with like an RPG kind of.
The more recent ones, especially.
Yeah,
they're still turn-based combat games at their heart. But I hear you.
Yeah, but
So
sorry, you good?
No, go ahead. Here you go. So what you're explaining, a game that comes to mind is, I don't know if you ever played Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
Where like
Heavy
your
Rain.
decisions in that game are permanent. Like,
I think this is Heavy Rain is probably still relatively linear in comparison, but I hear your point.
Yeah, I play Heavy Rain, so I get what you're saying. But like Fire Emblem, for example, if you make a wrong, it's kind of in the same move, Heavy Rain, but in Fire Emblem, you get attracted to the characters, you get attracted to everybody. They have little romance, quips, dialogues and stuff like that. But at any moment, if they die, they're gone. So that's the type of fear that I actually would enjoy more. That's the one thing I kind of didn't see in this Bono, but I didn't expect to see it, honestly. But that's the type of fear that I'm talking about, because that's true fear. That's
but Devon, I don't know if I agree with your distinction about like artificial fear versus true fear. Like I don't necessarily,
because if I'm truly afraid of something, I'm either gonna run or I'm just gonna it's something that
provokes action. It provokes some kind of action or reaction.
We're fight or flight. Yeah.
Yes. But there's nothing that you reacted to. Or no type of, it's a stimulus, but it didn't provoke anything.
So, give me an example of that, because for me, I'm just hearing like there's just real fear, and then there's things that should be scary and are not, and then I would just say they're not fear. It's not artificial fear. It's just not fear. Period.
Okay, so
I do have a follow up about like an example within the haunted PS1 demo disc, but I'll come in after Devon.
No, I think what he's trying to get at too is that if something alters your action as a human being, or alters how you take your next steps or what you're going to do next, he considers that real fear, because it invoked something permanent, or that it influenced your next action.
And this is where I was saying that how people play differently, and that's perspective, because I personally play games like that, like when I die, that's it, because I don't want to start over. Like, I don't want to have
Yeah.
to go back and
Yeah.
start from save. Like, I play with true fear because I don't want my character to die or whatever.
That was effigy for me. That was the one where you thought the zombies were slow and they were coming at you, right? And then you died, and you. Thank goodness you didn't have to kill those zombies again. But I was like, dude, if I don't find a save point soon, I'm gonna quit this game. Like,
Yeah.
I'm enough.
Okay.
I'm done. Right, let's
And
go.
honestly, just like horror games, that's how I play. Because obviously there are games where you respawn, obviously, but that's where your mindset is different for the type of game that you're playing.
Yeah.
So
that's a
Yeah,
good point.
you're absolutely
horror game,
right.
I'm not trying to die because I don't want to start back over. That's
Oh
like,
yeah, I don't want to see that thing
survival
again. I'm
part.
good.
I assume that's why, like, Resident Evil 1 is famous. One of the reasons why Resident Evil had a famous save system where you had, like, the little typewriter, little cartridges, was to also make...
Yeah, I've seen people do that.
One of it was a save limitation of the PlayStation 1, but the other part of it was to make you know that saving your game is a big moment for you, right? Like right now, I mean, there was definitely an era of PC gaming where I was quick saving, quick loading every corner, like out of terror. But in reality, it does prevent you. It kind of minimizes the fear, and if your fear partly is the permadeath or having to go back a certain amount, your actions have some more permanence. But Bobby, I know you were going to give another example here.
That's exactly.
Oh yeah, like so I haven't played that much of the Haunted Disc 1, but I did really enjoy playing Sauna 2000. If anyone played that.
Yeah, can you describe it a bit for everyone?
Yeah, so Sauna 2000, it starts you off. Is it okay if I give anything away, Michael?
Oh, please. Yeah, this is a spoiler show, so you can talk all you want about it.
I should also consider chat, but yeah, in Sauna 2000, like they start you off on this like beach, this woody beach, and like there is a sauna, and you are instructed to find an axe and cut wood to start the sauna before sunset. And at least in my one playthrough, you start really wondering like how stupid you are because you've searched everywhere and there is no axe. I can't fulfill like the first thing on the list. And you know, the sun's setting, like you see like the PS1 GPU colors like rendering, and like it's getting like more and more orange.
Yeah.
And you know that your time is about to wrap up, and you're just like, I cannot find this axe anywhere. And in my playthrough, because at this point you've been conditioned to just be constantly searching, so you're moving around, you're looking anywhere, until at one point you're looking, and then you turn and you see a gigantic, like mammoth looking guy running full force at you with an axe. And I saw that, and I just like froze because like I was like, he's going way faster than I've ever been able to move. I don't think I can go any faster. I'm definitely going to die here, but that might be with the axe. And then it just transports you into this whole other dimensional thing where you're going up a staircase, and like the graphic, it's like the game just starts. It's made to look like you're just glitching and you're just going through the glitch. And you end up in this house and you see yourself playing the same game, and yeah, it's a trip. But in that moment where like I spent like 4 minutes 30 seconds, it felt like just I can't find the thing, I can't play, this is an unplayable game.
Yeah.
And then you just turn and you see death coming right at you.
It'll be a memorable experience for you.
Yeah, like I mean, I still see it. Like I was just like, I can't do anything. I haven't even been able to find an axe. Like I can't defend this guy. So yeah, it's just, I guess my fight or flight response is just like I'm just gonna freeze up and just accept it.
Yeah, I actually had that feeling in a lot of the games, to be honest. Like, as I was playing them, I kind of got to points where I was like, well, this must be it, or I've explored it all. And that's where I kind of got to a moment where I was like, oh, and then I would figure it out, and I was just like, oh, old school game style. I need to push this specific thing or do this specific thing, and I had some moments of frustration with that. I like with Sauna 2000, right? That was the name, right? I'm trying to remember all the names here.
I believe so. I think it was 2000.
What I liked about that and a lot of the games was kind of the visual glitchy insanity that you saw there. That is, I think, really good again with horror. Does anybody remember like Eternal Darkness for GameCube, for example, where there would be like these little graphical effects that would make you feel like you might be going crazy, or like that your TV or the electronics were actually breaking, right? I remember falling for that. Like the volume controls would go up and down, and you'd just be like, you know, what's going on, or Metal Gear Solid famously reading your memory card. There's some cool subversive ways to be able to create horror. I have a question for you all about that, because I think that can be well done. But my big criticism, not just of horror games, but horror movies as well, is if they rely too much on supernatural kind of elements or effects as a crutch for poor storytelling. And not everything needs to be some masterful storytelling piece. And jump scares. I wonder, in some cases, like a show or a movie or a game is just trying to simulate like mental collapse, and that's obviously kind of challenging to do.
Well, one of my biggest reasons of really loving the horror genre, whether it's I'm a Shudder subscriber and XYZ, it's because there's a ton of character development, and there's usually a lot of lore. So if you have like a good horror game, a good horror book, there's a lot of lore that encapsulates you or really brings you in. Yeah. And then there's a lot of character development where you're like, I actually care about these people. Mm-hmm. So that's what nowadays you don't really get that. You get jump scares and gore. And you're like, man, I don't really care that person died, honestly.
Or the supernatural point is like the supernatural. I think supernatural stuff is incredibly hard to do, and I may be more critical about this than most, because I feel like oftentimes writers will just like thread things along, making you feel like there's going to be some sort of like culmination where things will make some amount of sense, and then in reality it's just like, well, it was ghosts or Satan or whatever, and it's just like, come on.
Well, actually, if you've ever played the game Maze, it's kind of like that. Like, you're doing all these things, and you're like, okay, I'm waiting for something to happen. Like, any moment now. And then it's just needless activities that lead you to that. And you're just thinking to yourself, like, how does this even work? I'm still playing it. You know, I like it. I enjoy it. Because it's just sort of like that needless sense. But it's funny because you're just like, huh.
Is that unethical to you all? I actually think that's like unethical, like storytelling. And I honestly feel that way about, in general, like to what Legend's saying, and just in general, like I remember, I don't know if I should say some of these because I know they're beloved franchises.
Let's
by people.
Do it.
Like,
does Lowe's still sponsor us? Like,
yes. I'm gonna say like. And this was a while, and let me just say this as well, because I think, as I've said before, I think the mood or like your whatever's going on in your life at the time you experience media is a big part of it. So I don't want to do something. I think that's a huge part of it. I've revisited game. I watched a movie this last weekend that I remember loving, and then I wasn't as into it this time around, and I'm like, oh. That's what I was going through in life. You know what I'm saying? So let me just say that. But I remember watching the first season of American Horror Story, thinking that there was going to be something. It was all going to come together. And at the end, and I might be butchering this because I know that has a huge fan base since it has like 50 seasons at this point. But I remember at towards the end when it was clear that this was like the answer, supernatural. That's it. Like all these like plot threads that are thrown away. Then I'm thinking to myself, how unethical is this that you've strung me along thinking that there's going to be some sort of answer, conclusion.
Explanation.
Detective stuff does this as well by throwing red herrings.
Well, I have to say that Korean dramas and like foreign dramas are not like that at all.
Korean cinema is masterful in horror movies,
them
for
just
sure.
From that point, because there's such a huge difference between Americanized stuff and, things from other country. Like, if this guy is like, hey, dude, I see this ghost, it's been haunting me for years now. That's why all these weird things starts happening. Their buddy's like, dude, I believe you. We're down. Let's fight this. Let's figure this out. Let's go. We're on it. Even if there's that one person who still thinks logically, they still believe that person because they just have that trust. They've been friends for years, and all of a sudden you don't trust the dude that's telling you he's seeing things. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, does that scare you all? Like the most impactful like depictions of horror, whether it's games, books, movies, do you all think it's more so like is the shock value of certain things, or like the glitchy, the tension, or is it, the storytelling? I guess I'm just trying to figure this out. It's the same reasons I have issues with Stephen King stuff. I'm not a fan of Stephen King stuff. I don't feel like things are explained. I'll get off my tirade. I'd love to hear what other you all think about this.
So for me, right, this is kind of, I'm not trying to go back to what I said or whatever. But I have kind of 3 pillars. I'm not a fan of the horror genre, but something that will actually, I guess, try to get me like, actually afraid and fear and actually act on it. There has to be something at stake, and this is for games. For movies, not so much. But there has to be something at stake. For movies, that could be like a favorite character or whatever. But for games, that could be a character in the game. Same thing. The setting is kind of whatever, but there has to be something at stake, and there has to be like a switch of mood for me. It's kind of why I guess a lot of people kind of like Get Out and other stuff like that, because it doesn't really approach it like a horror movie. It's kind of like completely out there. So a movie, and Mike, you may not like what I'm about to say, but we'll see.
Let's hear it.
But so a movie that people probably don't feel like is a horror movie, and it isn't in classification, is actually Juice. So Juice was yeah. Okay, so here's the thing, right? So
I'm curious what you're gonna say here. Keep going.
So with Juice, the minute Bishop gets the gun, or the minute the gun is in play, that whole, like, even the cinematography, everything around like that movie now becomes a horror movie. But that movie was not set up to be a horror movie at all.
Yeah.
That movie was not that. It's kind of like a traditional explain the hood type movie, but it actually became a horror movie.
Yeah, total difference. Yep.
Right. And that's the thing. See, for me, that is where horror really comes in, because you got attracted to all these characters, but not in the traditional horror movie sense. You got attracted to these characters, and like, this is like if you're watching a generic like comedy movie, and then suddenly the comedy movie turns into a horror movie. It's like, oh no, what is this? Like, I like it when it takes the expectation and it kind of twists it. And that's where I'm actually afraid, because I didn't come into this thinking one way. I came into this thinking one way, but now it is not that way.
It's really
now,
unnerving. I totally agree.
Exactly. And for me, that's where horror's like.
Yeah, that's how like Filth Breed was, or that's how Effigy was. You know what I mean? It had sort of like that story base. There was that that characterization. Like I wanted to continue playing the game. Like I can't say that I didn't. It kind of alluded you to like there could be more. What's going on here? Why is this house going on? Compared to like tasty ramen, where you're just like chucking something at like a bowl of soup, like
yeah.
Like
that was way faster than you ever did.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting though, Devon, because I didn't think about that, but that does make sense, because they passed off like at that very moment in Juice. It's like it was a curse that was like off, and everything was just like switched over. It's like you got the juice now, like
right.
Yeah.
It's even, I'm sorry, I need to talk about, but it's even to the point where Omar Epps is done with his DJ set, or he's done, and he's like slowly walking to his friends or whatever, and his heart like sinks, because he understands. He's like, oh, we're about to go rob this store. Like, even that. The thing is that it doesn't really tend to like it's not like leaning towards that, but a lot of it is just how things went. Even the music started becoming like weirder and like darker and stuff.
You notice the change. Like you get that switch. Like, oh, hold on, something's going on here.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I'm looking into like, I feel like I have these memories that I can't really recall exactly, especially on the film side. I think the film side with tone, the tonal shift is very unnerving. So I think that's really interesting to explore.
I really would like to see a game that is like that. I would love to see like an RPG, like if it's like, I don't know, Genshin Impact or whatever. That's not a bad example. It would have to be a single player, in my opinion. But a single player game where it's like it plays, you're playing like Uncharted, and you're like, dude, just going through your thing, and then suddenly you have no weapons, and it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And
now you're playing a survival game.
Right. Like and I think that's also why I
that was Killer Bees. Killer Bees. It was a horror survival game because those bees, and then you couldn't go past that circle thing until you killed all those waves, and you didn't know how many waves were coming.
I definitely thought Killer Bees was a Wu-Tang reference until I played the game.
Wu-Tang.
I was like, dog, I'm a little let down by this, but no, it was pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Diversify your
That
bonds.
expectation, then yeah, anything's gonna be a letdown if it's not a Wu-Tang
You
reference.
gotta have a Wu-Tang reference in there for sure.
Yeah.
You know, one game that comes to mind that I guess in some ways is a horror as well, if you really want to think about it. This game is a little bit lesser known. The game is called Spec Ops: The Line.
Oh yeah. That's a good one.
Spec
That's a
Ops
good
is
one as far as that goes.
Is a really good game because on the surface you look at it and you're just like, oh, okay, Call of Duty-ish military bro combat game. And then you start playing the game and you realize very quickly, I think it's kind of based off of the Joseph Conrad story, Heart of Darkness, if I'm not mistaken. And the whole idea here is that you're essentially, it does have a bit of a tonal shift, because, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil, but it kind of goes into this whole idea of thinking about, okay, are we the good guys in combat? And then kind of reflecting on some actions, reflecting on PTSD and the how war wears down on you. And so it's very subversive in that way because you're playing this military shooter going around killing everybody and then you're just like, shit, like my actions have consequences. I'm going crazy. Other people are going crazy. And so I think that tonal shift when you start to realize what's going on, I think that's potentially a good example. And it is a rather underrated game in that regard.
For me, that would have to be The Town of Light. I think that's a very underrated psychological thriller. Like, it's really intense story based. You go in with one expectation, and you're not thinking that it's and it's a visual novel, which is actually really cool. Yeah, you go into it thinking that you're just trying to find sort of like this history about this woman, coming to realize that she's all these different people, and was it the experience that she had in the place that she was in that caused it to be that way? Is something that happened to her when she was a child that made it? So there's sort of like these decision-based moments that you have, and the deeper that you go into, I'm trying to be like vague but not vague, but the deeper that you go into the game, to realize that things are like not as what they seem. They're frightening you. There's stuff coming out. You're just like,
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
It's a really good. Oh, hold on. I'll link it in the chat. But it's really cool. I really liked it. It's an amazing game, and I wish people played it more, to be honest. It really touches that base on like the mental health issues and mental illness without you realizing that's what the game is about.
Yeah. Going back to what you posited, Michael, in terms of like a game using and potentially overusing like graphical glitching to indicate this, that, and whatever. I basically think that actually playing this demo disc made me kind of realize that, like this like 90s era of gaming that is now like super accessible in terms of recreating, and you see like horror games used for it especially, it made me think like, PS1 and PS2 graphics are kind of like VHS for horror film.
Yeah.
Like because the reason why people are afraid of the dark is not because they're actually afraid of the dark. They're afraid because they can no longer see.
Yeah. The unknown.
It's fear of the unknown. So when you've got these, muddy colors and it's hyperpixelation, you're just like, that could be a tree. It could also be a person. That whole it's a way of it's a visual. It's inserting visual mystery, and you can definitely overuse like graphical like glitching and for like storytelling. When it was like, like if you were a screenwriter writing a video game, it was like, I'm not really sure what happens here, but all I know is that we're supposed to get to this place where this big scare happens. Let's just fill the screen with a bunch of crazy crap. Like, it's like, and we'll just say that like, your psyche is breaking down.
Exactly.
And it's,
Well, that
it's
was kind of Dread Delusion, wasn't it? Where you were sort of talking to like these avatars, and then you ended up talking to like some type of mystic soldier, and it was like the sky was blue, but you're in this place where everything's pink, and there's this weird floating ship in the sky with like alchemy signs underneath it, and you're just like, there's kind of questioning where.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in defense of like good storytelling, I feel like if it's going to be used well, it's often used once, not throughout the game, because I feel like you kind of just expect it, like like, oh, I'm going through a transition and I'm going to arrive at a new place.
Yeah, it could be a crutch, and that's my concern. I mean, some of these games, I know one of the games I actually liked the most of these, which I should say I liked it as a demo. I don't think I'd like it as a full-on game, but was Filthbreed, and I know Legend liked it as well. And I finished playing it, and then I just jumped straight into her stream and watched her play it as well. And I thought that game did some good stuff, but if you look at the description, I think it was a college project.
Oh yeah.
And I will say, like, one of the people who was watching the stream with me playing last night was saying, kind of had a bit of a hot take, and was saying how some of these indie games that are released are kind of like college projects and not necessarily like full-on releases. And I think in some cases, especially with this horror stuff, if we had to make a game in a really short amount of time, we might rely on some of these crutches. We might be like, all right, let's do lo-fi, scary visuals. We can't be ultra realistic, so let's go to like imaginative content. Let's make everything darker, disempower you really quickly, bring in some nostalgic era stuff. Not to say that that's bad, but I feel like it could easily be used as a crutch. And then we're just going to put a ton of supernatural, glitchy stuff, and you're going to be afraid. You're not going to know why, but you're going to be afraid. And then the demo ends, and you're just like, that was cool. I guess I was afraid, but is that a memorable experience that's going to stay with me?
And Mike, tell us a little bit more about Filthbreed. I have it in my notes. It was a pretty interesting story.
Legend, do you want to talk about the story there?
Yeah.
Well, it was really interesting. You were just kind of thrown in sort of like this dark place with a flashlight. What I enjoyed was that it actually told you, I'm actually going to bring it up, it actually told you how to play the game. If you wanted to trust it,
that's
it
true.
had like that list for you, right? Where you were just like, okay, look, you're not going to get a lot of bullets. Ammo is sparse. You're going to have only this one gun. Carefully your surroundings. So if you're going to read something, you better be sure there's not some creepy crawly coming at you. You don't want to make sure that you're paying attention, which I really like. That kind of like stepped it up a notch for me. So as soon as I got to the game, I'm like, all right, what was I going to do? I went for my weapon. I made sure I looked around first before I like picked up anything to read. And then it was very audio immersive. There's like these squishy noises, and you're just like, like what is that? And then the thing comes at you. Yeah, and I thought, okay, so there's not going to be that many bullets, so.
I got chills when the monster came out. I definitely freaked out.
It was the creepiest, noisiest thing I've ever, and it was like, it wasn't even scary. It was just the sound that it made that was really disgusting.
Yeah, it had that amnesia effect.
It was the nastiest thing. Yeah, it was so gross. And I'm like, searching to the corners because they came at you, and they came at you in groups. It wasn't like some solo guy. Like, down the hallway, which was perfect. I kind of liked that. But then as soon as you go into this weird thing where you think you're supposed to go into, right, that weird mouth, I thought it was a portal. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, I can't go anywhere else. I'm going.
See, but let me ask you this, Legend. What does any of that mean? Like, that's a perfect example. As much as I enjoyed it, like, I don't want to be in a situation. I have a criticism about a lot of art when you just threw a creepy image, like a face opened and like creepy looking, and you're just like, oh, scary, huh? And it's like, yeah, but what the hell did that have to do with anything? And maybe that's fine to be subversive and to try different things and just do a message. Yeah. Yeah,
for me it was a triggering effect that didn't need to be there. It's like once you touched that, then the dudes came for you. And then I didn't really like, I liked it, but I didn't like it. Like you kind of just turned a corner, or like you had me trigger a door maybe, but not some weird obscure like mouth looking wavy thing. Like there was no point. And there's one point where you go into the rooms and you're exploring, and it looks like there's smoke coming out from underneath the door, like water maybe. I shot at it. I thought maybe something would explode, because I would just
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
just gonna-
I shot at it too.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
curious. I was like, what's gonna happen here? Nothing. Okay, well that was
So let me ask
was
you all
weird.
about that. Like, as I think we had some enjoyable experiences with this demo disc. We had some frustrating experiences, not only from like, a
giant
gaming
cockroaches.
standpoint.
Like, what was the point of that? Like that, I didn't understand.
And so that's I guess kind of leads to this big question though. Are there any demos that you've played thus far that you would say, "Hey, I want them to flesh that out completely," or I would
Yes.
buy a bigger version of it?
I would, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant, as positive as I normally am. I'm a little hesitant on this question to say that there were
I
any
am
that I'm
too.
fully on board with.
All
Here's
right, so
somebody-
here's the one. Snowy Castle, beautiful game. Obviously not a whole lot of story. You just went around lighting candles in a castle. But if they flesh that out with a story in the environment of that castle, I mean, that would be awesome.
Nice.
So Snowy
Like,
Castle is one of
They,
the ones.
they gave you a rich environment. You just want a reason to be there or a reason to be
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah. Ode to the Moon was one that I finished too. That was really good. Yeah, actually, no, I just like that game. I would have bought that. They didn't explain too much of the story, but it was a good game. So
That had a
I
really
would
cool
definitely
vibe. The
recommend Ode to
aesthetic
the
was
Moon.
really solid on that
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anybody got any like favorites that they would like to see built out a bit more?
So I think Heartbreed, Filth Breed.
Heartworm?
I'm mixing two together.
Filth Breed.
Filth Breed
Yeah.
and Heartworm.
Something.
I'm mixing
Oh,
two,
yeah.
so it's both of them.
Yeah, Heartworm, yeah.
Yeah. So both Heartworm's kind of I don't know, it's kind of standard. It's standard
was
for
cool.
that era, I guess. And that's kind of why it serves the nostalgia purpose. But it's not super unique. But even still, if that's what you kind of want to bank on, then yeah. I kind of would like to see more content with that, but it's kind of weird with those games. I'm about to say Heartbreed. I'm about to mix the names again. That one, but the one that has Breed in it, I guess. That one I didn't get. I actually had more technical issues, but the premise seemed kind of interesting. Basically, I had it to where I wasn't really able to play, but it kind of, I don't know. The lighting was very reminiscent towards like, it's actually reminiscent towards stuff now-ish, to where like you really can't. You're like in the house and you can't really see much, but it's like I don't know. I think the actual effects of the game are actually really good. It's really kind of like it really does set that tone. They just kind of need more.
The
But
gameplay was definitely, I think, a little too old school for me.
Yeah,
like a lot of these games are trying to simulate too much of like. I mean, I guess this is the way I'll put it. Like, I'll say, like, if the goal of these games is to be like, your challenge is to recreate the mid to late '90s aesthetic and feel, then a lot of these games captured it great. Right?
Yeah.
But if the question is to make a really enjoyable game that matches the aesthetic but has modern sensibilities and modern gameplay, I'm very concerned about a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, yeah, don't put 2020 in your name if you're not going to do 2020 things. You know, don't do it. That's just because I was expecting to be able to not play these games seamlessly, obviously, but to be able to have, like, you know, like Tony was saying, the compatibility of being able to, like, if I wanted to control this entire list, I can. If I wanted to just keyboard it, I could. But I mean, don't do 2020 if you're not going to make it, you know, accessible to everyone. And that goes for people with people with disabilities maybe won't be able to play this either because it's not accessible because you don't have that access. You know, you're really limiting yourself as a game developer if you don't do these simple things.
Yeah.
Even with the visuals too. Like if I had color blindness, so many of these games would have been like impossible to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we should say, you know, I totally agree with you there. Accessibility and for all abilities is incredibly important. I will say we could probably cut a little slack to the fact that they're demos, but I agree with you totally, Legend, that like at the end of the day, like in 2020, we should be able
one
to
of these
expect
is a game that they wanted to take further.
Yep.
Yeah, as a streamer, the first thing that I do is I go to the settings.
Yeah, same here.
You know?
Yeah, I said yeah. Well, one thing I really liked is that the again like the environments. I really like the environments of just hey, just throwing. There's a few games that you didn't know what to do. You just walked around and you just figured it out. There's bits of elements in that in like Silent Hill games and bits of elements that in Resident Evil where and even BioShock. If you want to look at some of the newer games, BioShock, where it's like no, it's not necessarily given to you, but it's up for you to walk around and to sort of build the story on your own based on items that are placed
Environmental
within the
storytelling.
environment.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Oh,
environmental
yeah.
storytelling.
And Bioshock is
Yeah.
famous for that. Even the folks who did Gone Home and Tacoma were part of the Bioshock 2 team. I'm with you on that. System Shock, if we want to give a shout out, taking it back. System Shock 2 is a personal love of mine and is definitely fits the horror theme properly. Yeah, interesting. So any other games? I know we're coming close to time here. Thanks everybody for jumping into the chat, and we'd love if as we're kind of wrapping up stuff, we want to give you a shout out if you want to share your favorite kind of.
What about that
favorite scary
ramen
games.
noodle game, dude? Like the haunted ramen.
I didn't
noodle
play
thing.
that
That's
one
sort of-
actually, so I want to hear your thoughts.
Tasty ramen.
That
Tasty
reminded
ramen.
me of
Tasty
that.
ramen was it. I made a list. So I like to place Forbidden. Yeah, that was weird. It just made me hungry, to be honest. Like, it was so confusing because
Yeah.
like Leela was saying earlier, the controls were weird.
Yeah.
I even tried it with a controller, and I was like button mashing. And I was like, "What does this
But,
do?"
alright.
Because it wasn't A, it was Y, and I was just like,
Did you-
"What? How do I can't turn?" To then I went,
What was the goal of the game? You had to get keys and you had to put it in the door.
"Yeah, you had to put it. You had to pick up the keys with E." And you
Okay,
put it in the door by hitting your mouse, yeah, and then to like escape, I guess. But you had to like.
That was it.
Well, no, you had this giant bowl of soup like chasing you, so you had to take the ramen noodles and like chuck it at the thing.
You could have
like
thrown
keep
the
it.
water noodles.
Yeah, you had to throw it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. See.
And
I didn't get that at first because I was like, huh, okay. And the weird thing about these games too is like when you when you played the game, it was done. The game was like, all right.
Yeah, an abrupt experience.
You know, I don't like that. It was weird.
Well, with Tasty Ramen, if you actually got all 9 keys and you were able to get out, you then entered this room with just a guy waiting for you. I'm trying to remember what he said. Do you remember, Patience?
Just saying it's the end of the demo.
Oh yeah, he would like thank you for playing the game and like and then
I like that. I love it when the game dev is like, thanks for playing, thanks for giving our game a try. The Typing Tale Chronicles, I like that. The game, they were always like, yeah, thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. I liked A Place Forbidden. I think that's something that I would play because the puzzles. I don't like puzzle games, so I try to keep myself pretty well rounded when it comes to indie games. I will try anything. I don't care. It really doesn't. I want to have that experience of your game. That's why I'm in this genre.
Yeah.
But I'm not fond of puzzle games. I will not play them often. Roguelites, I will kind of sort of touch. Like there's certain aspects of this like thing that I'm just not like, I'll give it a try, but whatever. I liked The Place Forbidden because it was story based and it had the puzzles that were easy to figure out. I thought that I wasn't going to be able to get the lockbox, but it actually clicked like, hey, it's the books on the shelves. I just got to start from the spoiler alert, my bad.
No, it's all good.
I just got like, whoa,
Any game comes
like
all spoilers. It's all good.
Yeah, there's like some aspects of it that I didn't really like. Dead Heat was just like, I didn't even try that. I don't even know if I will with a controller. That totally turned me off. The Dread Delusion was good. Erasure was, I don't do puzzles. I can't. I was like moving. I didn't get the whole point of it at all.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. That was weird. And the cat game, the Neko Yumi, just like, what is this?
And that's the part that has me a bit
I didn't know.
like,
I was like, what? Like, so even if you like some of these games, because some of these games, like I said, A Place Forbidden, Feel Free, I would play, Heartworm, I would play, with the controller, not with keyboard mouse, because girl had to testing me.
Yeah.
Like, she was testing me. And then you're stuck with these games that you'll never touch again. So it's like this weird hit or miss thing. I enjoy being able to have access to all these games. I liked being able to sort of have like these teaser moments But I don't know if I really want to purchase something like this, either physically or otherwise, because there's some games I'm just not going to touch. Like, is it going to be as someone who's like a parent, you know what I mean, or like fiscally like tight? I'm really tight, with my money. Is this going to be worth it for me to be able to even get this? Because I'm stuck with track.
Some of these games I definitely view as more as like, this is interactive art. This is art that you interact with and participate with.
College project, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I guess I have a bit more of a forgiving mindset where I'm just like, oh, okay, that was an experience, and then I just move on. And other stuff, it's just like when I was like, oh yeah, no, like that was really well done. And in other games are just like, yeah, this is fun. I like this.
I agree with you.
That's kind of like my three criteria with a indie experience like this.
I would love to hear the reasoning of why they decided to go with what they were doing as far as getting all the indies together and having everything on one thing. I would want to know if it's necessarily for exposure or if it's for like feedback. Like, what was the reasoning? Because I agree with all those points, because I think honestly they're probably all valid. They probably do want exposure. They probably do want feedback on like different mechanics and stuff like that. And some of them probably do want to expand. And the fact that you can actually go to their Twitter pages inside the launcher, that's something that kind of implies that I need or I /want feedback. To me, at least, it implies that check me out, check out my site. So
like reach out and like
I
let me know
think they could have categorized it a little bit better though, because like Tasty Ramen really didn't have to be in there at all. Like, I think as far as like content creation, it was a little freaky. I have to it was like, dude, like, because at first I didn't get it. I died twice. Like, I died.
Legend, I actually
think my channel that says anything to you guys about how often I die in video games, regardless of how easy it is to anyone else. Like, I die all the time. So I died like twice right off the bat. Because I couldn't figure out
why you're just figuring
I was like, what is this thing? Like, because I saw something in the back and I was like, and then there was like all these needles and it then it clicked like, oh, okay, because if you could pick up the keys and toss them in the thing. Ding ding, toss the ramen.
Legend, it's funny you say that though, because I actually think I would have liked to have seen more things like Tasty Ramen in there, because I think they would have disrupted kind of like the standard dark beige horror that was there constantly. Because I definitely expected, hey baby, here, she heard me say, she said she heard us say ramen.
Yeah, girl after my own heart. I love ramen.
I said that I was looking for Mom.
Oh, Mom's probably in the other room. Yeah, they're getting ready for bed right here. So
I think I kind of am too. I don't know if we're about to wrap up. I don't want to rush anyone off, or I can just head out myself.
Well, yeah, and if you need to jump off, I don't mind sticking around a little longer because I have a couple other notes on horror, but I want to always be respectful of you guys' time. So if you got to jump off.
I'll just say like, hey, thank you, chat, for tuning in. Thank you all for having me. I would certainly not mind doing this again. I loved, Patience has especially loved playing these games as well.
Awesome. Hey, Patience, thanks for playing.
Thank you so much. It was a great meeting, and I'll follow up. And if there's anyone that I can follow up on Twitch, I'd love to do that. I'll hit you guys up in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Bobby. Really appreciate it. And we'll share your stream tomorrow. Tony, you got a bounce too?
Yeah, I got a bounce.
All right, let's clap it up for Bobby and Tony. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys being here. And if you guys got a bounce too, let me know. I'm not trying to hold everybody captive
I still want
here.
to talk about horror.
Yeah, I'm still good for a little while.
Yeah, because that was one of the things. Devon, you could let us know if you got to jump off here. But I do. I'm gonna bring in Courtney again here. I guess I don't need to bring up the graphic, but I do want to ask about that question. I think Layla, is that what you were saying as far as like horror movies, like any personal favorites or anything?
Yeah, I wanted to actually bring up because earlier we were talking about how like there's unnecessary like glitching and just random stuff at as fillers. So me personally, I like jump scares, but we all know like if you tuned in and you've heard me talk before, that I'm a feeler and I appreciate story and knowing the background of characters and going through the character development with them, and there actually being a sense of like purpose and development throughout the story, even if it is a horror movie. I look for that in movies and games. So what throws me off is like, yeah, I see that aspect too, but what I think is overused and just out there for no reason is gory movies. Like I don't need to see all this extra like intense, like all this real gory stuff to be like to get the story, to get the point through in the story. Like I don't need that. That's not my.
Can I ask you specifically on that? Is it whether, to me, I'm the same way if it doesn't have a point. I don't mind. I'm kind of a bit desensitized to blood and violence just from, I guess, watching this at too young of an age. So I don't mind that unless it's for like no purpose. So like I don't like the Hostel movies, for example, when it's just like the whole term torture porn. Like I hate that stuff. Is that what you mean, or do you mean just the use
like
of
just random like that? That's not my cup of tea for horror movies. Like, I don't need to see guts and everything to like be scared, I guess, because that's what I'm looking to be scared, or I'm looking to.
So like maybe more like psychological in that way, like
right, yeah. Even I guess, yeah, that makes sense too. But like sometimes they just overdo it. I want the story, but I also want it to feel like the anxiety and be afraid, but not because I'm just looking at guts the whole entire movie. Like that, that's a turn off for me. Like I don't want to see all of that. I need the story to make sense, and I need to like the focus to be the actual story, not guts everywhere.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Legend, Devon, how do you feel about that?
Well, like what Chat was saying, you know, with the Hostel movies, they are and they aren't. Like they're gory up to like the gory is part of the story. You know what I mean? Like I would rather not see it. I think sometimes they take too much time with it. You know, like I'd rather just like with games too. It's I'm not very visual. I am, but I'm not. Like I like the auditory. Like I'd rather play a scary game with headphones on than I would through just regular speakers, because it gives me more of like an immersive feel to it. Like the squishy sounds I can take, that kind of stuff I can handle. But when you're like, you know, the whole point of watching a movie or playing a scary game is to actually like look at what you're doing. I don't want to have to be like, you know, trying to like, because it's just too much. Yeah, it's just gross. Yeah.
As Leela pointed out and said, and she's absolutely correct, I'm more analytical on anything else, so I personally don't really care for the horror genre too much. However, for me, the stuff that I do enjoy from a horror perspective is like an I Am Legend, when that whole sequence with Sam with the dog and he's like running. And, you know, like, there's jump scares in that. But the only reason why I was scared, because I ain't trying to see Sam die, you know? That's the only reason why I'm scared. Like, that's it. You know? Because, like y'all pointed out, there's a point to it.
Well, and you're invested, right? The tension has a point, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the things with games where, like, famously, a lot of games will start off with, like, your sister gets kidnapped, and you're like, I don't know her. Like, you know, I don't even, like, I just met her. Like, she's supposed to be my sister. But if you have a relationship over time, keep going, Devon, sorry.
No, you good. It's what I talked about earlier about having a stake. I have to have a stake. If I don't have a stake, then I have no reason to really, follow with you. So, like I am, like, if I compare, like, I guess maybe I Am Legend to like maybe Carrie, or maybe like or maybe Human Centipede. Human Centipede was just disgusting. Like it was cool. Like it was, you know, there was a lot of psychological stuff that went on there, but at the end of the day, like that's kind of what it was for me personally. But for
I've never seen it.
Me neither.
I choose not.
I hate like those types of things, or like Tusk. If you guys saw the Kevin Smith movie, like I was just like, ugh.
But as far as I Am Legend goes, like that's something to where that is a part that I'm actually, if we're using real fear, afraid to see again, because it's like, you know, I don't want to see this. You know, that's my.
The Blair Witch Project was for a lot of people too, wasn't it? Doesn't like the dog get hurt or something happens to the dog, or there's a get ill. Yeah. That's why a lot of people, there was like streamer Twitter went.
So in that
Bam,
It is wild how animals in general. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
I mean,
Everyone's in uproar when animals are about to be hurt. Like,
yeah. So like, why do you want to like tempt fate like that with your game? Because as soon as like you said, as soon as people start seeing it, that's it. Because the I Am Legend, that emotional kid, you're just like, oh,
In that scene specifically, so Sam is basically running and he's like trying to dodge whatever infected coronavirus zombies or whatever they are. I don't remember what the actual virus was, but yeah. So they're really fast and he's trying to like dodge and he goes into like this dark area and that's when it becomes kind of a horror because they're like creeping around the corner and it's like, is it a zombie? No, it's not. And then you're creeping around the corner and it's like, oh no, it's Sam, but he's hurt. He got bit. No, so it's like, oh no, I think there was like a deer specifically that they dragged, and you thought the blood trail may have been Sam. Like it's in those moments where it's like the horror elements are all projected. And now it's like, so for me, that's where like I'm afraid. But as far as like Carrie or Nights on Elm Street and stuff like that, I think it's only because it's like I know it's a horror trope and I know it's a horror thing that I'm so analytical that I'm like, yeah, okay, so they're just gonna, follow up. Now I just have to look for where I'm gonna be scared at. And I think that's kind of my block as far as like enjoying horror movies really, because I'm like looking into it. I'm like, yeah, this is a horror movie. So yeah, this is probably gonna happen here. Yep, it did. Oh, I'm kind of scared, but that's because I'm kind of squeamish and they just cut this girl in half, So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at there.
Yeah, games has that big whole mix though, when you've got that psychological thriller to it, plus you've got that story base, you've got that connection and you're searching, you're not having to do too many puzzles. Like there's this game, what's the game that you guys had me play that I had to stop? Oh, Casey Animatronics. Oh lordy.
Oh,
like that is too many things. It's great because it's story based. It's in a genre that you're kind of familiar with because it's kind of got that fan feel to it, But there's too many things for you to do. There's the flashlight, and then there's like this, and then there's that. Like Five Nights at Freddy's is like that too. I don't like those games where I'd rather just pay attention to what's going on, immerse myself into the story, really. Jump scares, me having to run for something, that's fine, but I don't want too many objectives. It like takes away for me, especially if I can't figure out what the objective is, and then I get bored and I'm like, that's it.
I think that's why actually a lot of the stuff that I like on the video game side isn't like explicitly horror. It just has like those elements to it, like System Shock, BioShock, or any of those kind of games of that variety, or as someone said, the Raven Home portion of Half-Life 2. I think also it plays a bit with expectations. As far as other films, because we did say we wanted to talk about that in this as well, like any of your personal favorites. We are in October, Halloween time. I'm a huge fan of horror movies, actually, but at the same time, I'm super critical of the ones I don't like. They have to have like a purpose to me in some way. Like if you're looking at something that has like like zombie movies, for example, if they're done right and they show, for example, the horrors of humanity, and it's not just depictions of violence just for the sake of violence. Do you guys have any go-to scary movies? I'd love to give this question to the chat as well. Any movies that you've seen multiple times? What are y'all's personal favorites?
One of my, I guess I'd say my favorite movies, because there hasn't been a real good scary movie for me in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that one of the most recent ones I think that I actually liked was The Conjuring. I think that actually, like, there's jump scares in there, there's a story, there's a bunch of stuff going on, and then there's a backstory that they also released. Like there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
But there's too many movies out there that are just like, the freaking movie starts off scary and then it just turns into nonsense, like you said, with the supernatural stuff. Like, did you ever watch Midnight Meat Train? I was like,
I couldn't finish it. Did it go supernatural?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
There we go.
There's like something, exactly. I was like, what in the world? So most movies nowadays, the scary movies, they don't. I feel like they just don't focus on story, a right amount of scares, like why they're being scared, like how you were saying, like there's just a bunch of filler stuff that doesn't make sense, or it's like over dramatic in a sense. Like,
I think that's what I love about Lovecraft, is that it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. You know, like I like
Yeah, we see
anything.
Amara in the chat is
Yeah,
Lovecraft
yeah,
Country.
totally. Like, yeah, got me into that because Secret World Legends is like that too. That's Lovecraft based, you know. There are a lot of games. Call of Cthulhu is Stygian. That's like it's weird because Lovecraft. I've heard. I haven't seen Lovecraft Country yet, but I know that it's from what I've heard, it's really good because it's like it's weird, but there's a point to it. You know, I like that.
Yeah,
like that. But for me, I'm more of like a classic. Like I like the old school Carrie thing. You know, I don't really like these remakes that they have going on because I feel like they just take away from. They make it too like ucky. You know, like there's some parts where like one movie I can't remember the title, but it's a remake of a classic, and it was just too bloody. I'm just like really. Like really, that's not even like the point of the whole. I hate it when they remake classics and they just ruin the whole thing. Totally turns me off. But there hasn't really been a good Saw. Maybe most recent for me was okay. But I do agree. I do like the Conjuring because it has like the nuns part of that backstory. You know, there's like all this huge like the sinister, that one old lady, the psychic, and then you go into her family. Like it just sort of branches out. It's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think Supernatural. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like I completely am opposed to that. I mean, for example, one I thought movie of recent memory that I absolutely loved, and it had elements of that in it for sure, was Hereditary. I think it was one of the most unnerving scary movies of recent memory. And then the follow up to that from the same writer director, Midsommar, was also good. But
that was weird. That was good.
But I love the horror genre. I'm sure I should have written a list ahead of time. But movies like let me think of stuff. The Invitation is one of my absolute favorite movies. It's more, I guess, like psychological thriller. But if you haven't seen that, highly recommend you do. You're Next, Cabin in the Woods, Let the Right One In, The Girl with All the Gifts. I think probably the best zombie movie if you haven't seen that before.
In the Kingdom. It's on Netflix. It is really good. It has got that colonial Korean genre, but it's zombies, and it's really cool how they just sort of. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, definitely big shout out to Korean cinema. I mean, Korean cinema is especially really solid when it comes to the
The Kingdom.
genre.
I would highly recommend. I really liked it because it was story based. It went straight to the point. It wasn't any of this like, oh, this isn't happening. This isn't why it is. It was like, all right, here's this conspiracy. This is why, you know, this is coming to light. But we're still gonna like stretch it as far as we can possibly go. And the good like psychological twist to it. I love the thing with a good twist. But I loved The Kingdom. If you like subtitles in or Korean dramas like that, I was pleasantly surprised by that. It was really good.
So does Lex backstory in The Wire count? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm sorry.
You can bring in The Wire for everything. I'm that hipster that will always talk The Wire.
Yeah,
so I'm with you
I'm
on
the
that.
same. No, I don't. Again, I don't dabble in it. I saw Candyman again. After I saw it when I was younger, and then I saw it again because it got reviewed.
Well, there'll be the new one as well.
Yeah, they're gonna remake it.
Wait, hold on, they're remaking Candyman?
Yeah.
Jordan
When
Peele's
is this? That's a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Peele's doing it.
And I believe the original actor, what's the man's name? Oh, I can't believe I can't remember it.
I know who you're thinking of, though. I don't know his name, but yeah,
I believe he's going to be featured in some form. I don't know if he's going to be the Candyman.
Is he gonna have bees? He's gonna have bees in his mouth again?
I'm curious. I mean, that movie is significant for a number of reasons.
That's what I thought about playing Killer Bees. Yeah. That's like it wasn't Wu-Tang Clan for me. I'm sorry. It was Candyman.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Which it brings to mind another documentary that's absolutely fantastic, which had me get a Shudder subscription just to watch it. There's a movie, I think it's called Horror Noir, which documents. It's a documentary about depictions of black people in horror movies, and also about black creators. And I think everybody should see it because it documents not only the significance of Candyman, Get Out, but of course Night of the Living Dead for, I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first ones to feature a black main lead in a horror movie there, and was significant for that. That ending was remarkably significant ending. So I highly recommend Horror Noir for sure. I also wanted to say that this demo disc has me thinking a lot about anthology horror movies. I'm a big fan of horror anthology
Yeah, that
movies.
makes sense.
So you have Tales from the Crypt, Creep Show, my personal favorite, Trick or Treat. If you have not seen that, I watch it every year. I believe it's a phenomenal movie. But I think this kind of fits that anthology vibe to it, and so I'd love to see kind of more. If we're not getting necessarily straight up demo disc, I'd love to see kind of some interwoven anthologies of games from different designers brought into play.
I agree. I wonder.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say that I think also it kind of just depends on what scares you personally. It's your preference.
What you lean towards.
The reason why my the movies that I like is like The Conjuring stuff, because ghosts and like exorcists, like demons and stuff like that stuff scares me. That's the stuff that gets me. Like, okay, there's some like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, okay, there's not some crazy guy like outside my house in this area that's gonna be chasing me down the street. Like that's not a typical thing. Things you can't see. Like I believe in like ghosts and all that stuff. So like that stuff scares me because I've personally dealt with that stuff.
I feel that.
Can we hear about this? I'd like to.
Oh my gosh.
If you don't mind sharing, I'd be very curious about this.
I'm actually a lot better or open to those experiences now. After I've had like my best friend passed away a couple years ago, so like now I'm like it doesn't freak me out as much. But when I was a kid, my grandmother used to play with the Ouija board all the time. Like, I guess she used to mess with the thing all the time, and it was like normal for me to see her messing with this thing. Until I would constantly see like this black figure with a hat on in my attic all the time. And like just stuff like that would happen as I was growing up. And then one day, like my grandma actually saw him or whatever it was, and she got rid of the Ouija board and like never messed with one ever again because she had some horrible experience in the kitchen with it. And I was like, like I get like sleep paralysis and all types of stuff. So just whenever I was growing up as a kid and her messing with that stuff, like I know that stuff shouldn't mess with that. If you don't know what you're doing with all that, don't do it because it's scary. So that's why those types of movies scare me, because I've personally experienced situations like that. So
that's crazy stuff. It sounds almost Babadook-ish, like the
Babadook.
Right? Like with the hat. Isn't that the idea there? Which is also a great movie for sure. Well, that's terrifying to see.
Yes.
Something like that. I don't have a story of seeing anything of that variety. I told you guys before we started the stream that I would share with you all a story when I'm a huge fan of Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. And when I got to think about how old I was. It was late high school, so I was probably a junior or senior, so like 16, 17 years old. Probably at an age, I had a big growth spurt when I was like 13 years old, so I pretty much became this size then. And I say that because my brother and I, who's also big, Eastern European Polish men, I don't know, whatever it is, but we went trick-or-treating and we wore like these Jason hockey masks, and we went to a house, and I guess they were really freaked out about it, and they had a gun on them, like right there. So when they opened the door, they were like holding a real gun, and behind them, and you could see like a whole like family was kind of like prepared, and it was a terribly unnerving moment where I was just like, oh shit, I didn't think about how people are viewing us. I still have this kid mentality that I'm out here trick-or-treating and not realizing how late it is, and that I look like a grown man out here. And I remember being terrified about that experience. Luckily, obviously, no one was harmed, but that was it was a scary trick-or-treat experience.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I haven't had anything, but my aunt said that when she would trick-or-treat in our neighborhood when we were little, or when she was little, I'm sorry, there was like just this guy and a clown. Like the typical, just like guy and a clown hanging out on the street. So she was like, no.
No.
And like ever since then, she has like this horrible fear of clowns. She can't. Nothing clown related, nothing
That's
at all.
real.
It totally freaks her out. Yeah, it's weird. Like people are like that though.
I don't know.
You always hear that story too about like the one lady who's like, you know, wears all white. She's in the road. Like there's a lot of things that happen because the veil is so thin, especially in Halloween, that it's not surprising that a lot of these stories, you know, happen or that the experiences happen.
I don't think I know that
believe in
reference.
stuff.
Like the
I'm-
lady that wears all white. What is that reference to? I don't think I know that one.
Well, there's always like this woman who wears all white, and she, you know, is like she must have had some type of accident, but she always like goes into someone's car and tells them like, "Hey, like you're not supposed to go down here." She's able to like stop the vehicle. There was this one thing I saw it on Dateline. It was at this railroad track. They did this school bus and they put like white flour on it, and I guess if you stop on the tracks, there's some force that allegedly moves you, and if you look, there's like little children's fingers because there was an accident that happened there. I know, like sorry. And yeah, and I guess like if you I'm sure if you Google it you can find it, but it'll actually like the vehicles move and you can see little handprints because they won't let any vehicle, I guess, stop on like the track and stuff. And I'm Filipino, so we have all kinds of like superstitions and like crazy shit that happen. Like in the island, you're not supposed to like this. Like there's this one place where there's like these fairies that live like in the grass, and you have to leave like offerings. If you don't, they'll like haunt you for the rest of your life. Like it's the Aswang. Like Filipinos are highly, highly superstitious.
Yeah.
So it gets real tense around Halloween time. Yeah.
It's a freaking Ouija board.
Yeah.
That was your grandmother? That was the connection there too? Okay,
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. What?
Davon, any
Yeah.
scary stories on your end, or?
I mean, again, because like my version of fear is weird. Like I don't know that, but like I do find it weird though that I read Goosebumps and what was the other one? The other teen. It was like a teen version of Goosebumps. What was it? I don't remember what it was.
Oh, I know what you're talking. It was the R.L. Stein. He had like another one, right?
Yeah, it was another one.
Like
I used to love reading those, and I used to be like kind of I don't know, but I think the only time was there's one time I remember specifically when this is more of a Charlotte reference, but I took the 7. I used to live out Austin Woods, like a few miles away from the mall. Basically, you have to take the 7N to go to Austin Woods or whatever, but I had to take it late, so the 7N didn't run. It was just the 7S, and so the 7S gets on Sunset. Basically, I had to walk from the last Sunset stop to Austin Woods, and it was really dark. Really. It was like dark because there was no street lights, there was nothing. There was one specific street where it was literally just darkness, and I just had to walk. Like I didn't know I really didn't know where I was going. I had my phone light, so I basically used my phone light to like walk on through or whatever. And it was kind of a moment because everything literally around me was like, if I heard it, it was like, I don't know what that is. The hell is that?
Yeah.
What is that? Like, it was actually like that. That's
Would you call that artificial fear, Davon?
No. That is. No, I'm being real. That is
I'm
real
joking.
fear. Yeah, but that is real fear. Like that is actual. Like I literally was like, I just kept walking because that's the only thing I could do really.
Sure.
That's the type of fear that I guess I would say is more of a thing, at least for me, rather than like going to a haunted house, somebody popping up and scaring you, and then you punch the dude. Like that's not. It's like that type of fear was so unreal because I literally couldn't see anything. Like that's about as dark as I've ever seen. And the thing is, if you know like where this last 7S is that last 7S stop compared to Austin Woods it is a few miles down. Like it's far. So I had to walk far in the darkness, and I literally couldn't see anything. And that's Baysford Road too. Like I passed one bad area. Like that's fear. That's real. Like I was scared when I got to like an area that was actually lit, and I kind of noticed myself like I was sweating. Like it was actual like fear. And I think for me, like it's thrilling to feel that in a game, because the only way to feel that in a game, sorry, you were right. in a controlled environment because it's a game. But I guess for me, the way to feel that fear is to have something that I could potentially lose. And if I can potentially lose it and still have to go through the game, if this thing that I could potentially lose basically doesn't start the game over, then I'm good. But if it doesn't start the game over, if it doesn't start the game over and I still have to continue doing it, I'm like, oh man, I need to make sure this thing doesn't do. But when I'm on the edge, when I'm on like that moment where it's like it's this one turn, and if I don't do this right thing there, then this thing is dead, and now I have to make a decision. Am I gonna keep playing this game, or am I gonna restart like a Nuzlocke running Pokemon and nonsense? Like that type of fear in a game I actually crave because it's masochistic. It kind of tests me in a way. But in real life, absolutely not. Never again. I had to do that. So like. It was I ain't trying to do all that. Like I try to be in situations where I don't necessarily have to do that.
My wife makes fun of me for that all the time because I just like skip through town, like walking around, not like like oblivious to what's going on, not realizing. Probably the other people are more fearful. Like, what the hell are you?
One I guess supernatural weird thing. I don't know if it's really supernatural or me being paranoid. I was driving one time on like a one-way road basically. And I saw literally no one around me. I didn't know I was just driving or whatever. And I see a stoplight ahead of me. It was actually broad daylight too. It wasn't even dark. I see a stoplight ahead of me, and then I look behind me, or I look behind me and I see a car, and I'm like, okay, then I guess I just never saw this car, And it was a stencil car, stencil painting, and I see it behind me, and I'm like, oh, I used to do stuff for stencil painting. I did web development stuff for them, and I thought about like other stuff or whatever. And then I looked back, and then I looked forward because I was kept driving, and then something told me to look back again. I didn't see the car again. There was no way that car could have actually like turned left or right. There was no turns. There was absolutely no turns. Now, I only say that could have been paranoia on my part because I had gotten terminated for the job that I was at doing web development, and that always is on my mind like constantly. So it's a thing to where when I saw that stencil painting car, it brought back all those memories, and maybe it was because of something I was thinking at the time. But at the same time, I literally was freaking out because I got to work. I was going to work when that was happening. I was like, did I see that car? Like I didn't know. I was like, did I really see that car? Like I was
creepy. Like, that's creepy.
That mess was crazy because there was no way. It was literally a one-way road. There was no way that car couldn't have passed me because I would have seen it. And it was far. The problem is that it was far enough behind me to where it was like, unless this car like got abducted by aliens, there's no possible way that.
Unless it just pooped in the parallel universe.
So
yeah.
That's
like
really
a portal.
All this stuff you're mentioning, Davon, has me thinking more and more about the fact. One thing we, earlier when we were kind of going into our deep dive of like what makes a good horror game, and discussing how effective the games in the demo disc are, it's just wild to think about the fact that we purposefully as humans like want to experience fear in controlled environments. Right? Mm-hmm. Like that's rather fascinating, right? Because it's an evolutionarily psychological feeling to try to avoid certain situations based on the potential of danger. And yet we really oftentimes, horror movies are made left and right? I mean, this whole month they're going to be airing 24/7. And so it's interesting how we crave that experience in like a controlled environment. I don't really necessarily have too much further to say on that. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that, but it's interesting how this genre itself is something that isn't naturally something you would expect us as a species to gravitate to. I don't know.
I have a love-hate relationship with that. Like, I want to love horror games, and I feel like as an indie streamer, I should just to be well-rounded in my workspace. But I don't really like them because I love that feeling of like anticipating and like the jump scares and like, your kid coming in and you're just like, oh, because you're just so immersed in what you're doing.
Yeah.
But then I hate that feeling. I hate it at the same time. I don't want to have to run from things, I think is what it is. Like, I like certain video games. I don't want to have to run after nothing. I don't want anything trying to really eat me. Like, I just want to be able to go about my way, get my jump scares, find out what the story's about, be like, oh, like, wow, that's deep, and then move on to like the next thing, really, sometimes. But I want to be able to have that
I don't know.
Love. I can't,
I feel you.
I wish I could. I'm trying really hard to.
I don't really know if it's something that like we really. I don't know. I can't speak because I'm actually not really too much of a fan. But I guess the reason why I'm not a fan is because of the fact that it's like it's a genre that has a formula, and it's a genre that like if you put horror in like, let's say you put horror in shooter, or you put horror in platform, if you put the genre of like the theme and then you put the actual like what the game actually is, it's a thing to where like, yeah, it can shape things up. But I think for me, again, I need to see more horror that isn't based in the genre. I need to see like an action adventure game, but it has horror elements. Like for me, that's where I can actually get but if it's like in straight up in the genre like Amnesia, like I don't crave, me personally, I don't crave those games. But one complaint that I feel that some people do have is the ability to not fight back. Is that I feel like some people, they don't, that's why they don't like Amnesia, or was it SCP Containment Breach was kind of one that I kind of did like,
or the Penumbra games,
because you can't do anything. You're just literally like, walking around and stuff, or
realistically in most of those situations, though, I mean,
yeah, exactly,
probably couldn't, right?
Yeah, exactly, I agree. So like that's why like handicapping you isn't necessarily a bad thing. But some people, it's like the illusion of control. It's like, I have a gun, so I do have control, but it's like, no, you actually don't. Like, no, you really don't have control. I don't know. I can attest for why I guess I can attest to why I don't necessarily like the genre. I just don't like the genre because it doesn't. It's something to where it can mix in to other things, but I don't want it to be mainly thing. I don't want to play. If I separate Amnesia alone of horror, even though you can't technically do that, it's kind of like Myst in that regard, right? If you're talking about just gameplay elements of what you're doing, Myst of old, right? But if I put horror in there, then yeah, I think games like Amnesia, to where it does like, it puts the game in horror. I think that's good, but it's like, as like a human to try to like get attracted to it, I think it's just thrill. I think it's just the thrill of it. I don't think it's necessarily like, I think it's just the thrill of like, oh, I'm dead, like, oh,
you're putting yourself into a scary situation on purpose,
right?
Because you think you can control the situation. Like, how narcissistic is that? You think you're gonna be completely fine, dude. All I gotta do is walk here, do these things, and I'm good. I'm gonna be scared maybe a little bit. I'm sure something's going to chase me. I'm going to have to get eaten, or there's like the devil wait for me at the end. Like you're purposely putting yourself through these emotions. And it's like, why are you doing it for? And yes, it is because, you get that control. It's like almost like mind over matter, like fear, like trying to kind of like maybe subconsciously like overcome it, because you're purposely putting yourself in these situations when you really don't have to. I don't want to play this game. I want to play this game because it intrigues me. Do I really want to be scared? No. Is that what's going to happen if I continue to play this game? Oh, for sure. But you continue to do it, And sometimes for people, I think that can also be like a little bit of a breakthrough.
Yeah.
I think it's really just like Devon was saying, is that it's the thrill. It's the same reason why people stand in line for hours to get on a roller coaster, for that 1 minute sense of thrill, like adrenaline. People are literally throwing themselves in a machine to be swung around like at X amount of miles per hour, like people do it because of that thrilling feeling, that adrenaline. So I guess I do it. If I do play a horror game or a scary game, it's for that, because I get scared and I laugh at myself after, like, because I'm like screaming Bloody Mary, and I know I'm going to, because I'm peeking around the corner for like 10 minutes before I actually go and go to that scary pathway, or go down and do whatever I know is waiting for me, because I'm scaring myself. And then the jump scare happens or whatever, and I scream and I laugh at myself. That thrilling feeling that I'm giving myself by playing these games. But
I think a lot of this is also where our generation especially kind of is experience chasers, and as our society becomes more technologically advanced, as we become more tolerant, as our basic necessities are taken care of, We live in an entirely different environment than our ancestors have for 99.9% of our species' existence, right? Like the fight or flight response, and I'm not trying to diminish the fact that many people experience that on a daily basis, but we are somewhat privileged living in a Western industrialized democracy where, for the most part, we don't have the same level of fears that our ancestors did, right? And that fight or flight response that's so intrinsic to who we are as a species is something that we don't actually see expressed as much often. And I think that's why we're attracted to a lot of these video games, because they are kind of safe spaces for us to explore these kind of experiences and feelings. Like, I'm no fan of guns, right? Personally, in real life. But playing games, you know, you're experiencing something that allows you to do something different. And so I think that fear component comes a lot from that this is kind of a safe environment for me to experience a chemical reaction that is similar to other kind of reactions we get in life, right? And there could be something satisfying. There are some strange, like, crossover effect. I mean, one kind of example, I read this article recently, and I'm not going to go too detailed on this, but talking about how people's, like, certain sexual fantasies relate to their, like, political affiliations without them even knowing it, for example. And part of that is wanting to, maybe certain things are taboo, or certain experiences of, like, pleasure and pain are kind of, like, riding right there in that gray area. And I think as we continue to become a more an environment where our basic needs are satisfied for, people are going to constantly chase these experiences. Like you guys were saying, go to that roller coaster, go to that haunted house, go to that escape room, whatever it may be. People are trying to experience it in a different way because
they also kind of experience it in waves too, because most of the time, when do people watch horror movies or play horror games? Is during October. I mean, that's, you know, sometimes a little bit in the summertime, because summertime's usually when the prelude to all the scary movies kind of come out, you know, they just sort of like, you know, you can sort of like guess and tell when certain things are going to start popping out of the woodwork. But a lot of times too, people chase it in waves, you know, everything's like fine. And we're in the times of the COVID, you know, so I think that plays a huge factor in why we're seeing such a huge jump in what, in the horror genre, games, movie, otherwise, because like it's, you know, it's sort of like that release of fear, like we were saying, like we've all discussed. It's having that control. It's giving that sense of, you know, and what better time than now, because it's sort of almost like okay now because it's Halloween.
Yeah.
And what do you do? But you know, you do spooky stuff. You play spooky games. You hit up the gory time. You know, it's like almost giving yourself permission to
but
do
see,
that.
almost on paper, like if an alien species was observing what our species is going through during this time, it might seem antithetical to think that we would even go to places of escapism that are even more dreadful, right? During 2020, which has been a bad year. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, like, humans are remarkably nuanced creatures that seek kind of pleasure, pain in weird combinations. And I think, I don't know, that just makes me think more and more strongly about why we're so attracted to these types of experiences, especially because we want more scary. We want it to be more, like, psychologically warped in a way, to a point, right? I mean, like, as we were saying, like, I don't really just want to see violence for the sake of violence, but you want kind of a controlled experience that satisfies, X criteria for whatever reason. Which is interesting to think about.
And it's nice, you know, going back to the games that we were playing on the disc. It's that nostalgia feeling. It's that sense of,
true. That's another,
you know, that calmness, that happy feeling, because you know you're familiar with these games. It brings you home, but it also has that scary time. You know, you're also getting that jump scare. It's like it's this weird mix. I think was very well played. It was. I think it's very well played, and I think it's not giving the recognition it truly deserves, especially in the retro scene. I wish I would see more of this in the retro scene, because this would be perfect for it. Definitely sort of like gear it more towards that, more so than indie specifically, because, you know, we have our own little stations. But it was nice. It was like happy spooks. I don't know. Like,
yeah, and that should be said too, that, yeah, I mean, I think even, you know, my 6-year-old who you all saw in here, I mean, she kind of likes spooky stuff to an extent. Like, she was like, Dad, I think I'm ready for, like, the Goosebumps movie. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of thing, where it's like leveling up, or like Paranorman, Frankenweenie type stuff. So I totally feel you on that. But I think it's also very similar in that regard. I want to hit up a few comments real quick here in the chat. Shout out to Derivative. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate it. He said Fear Street. Is that the name of the book series? that you were talking about, Devon?
Yeah.
Fear
I
Street.
think that was it.
King of the Nerd, thanks to Derivative for solving that mystery. King of the Nerd saying is true fear is being in the lead while racing at a game and just knowing second place is on your back bumper and it's the last 2 laps before you win and then you either run out of gas or spin out. That is a scary situation for
He's
sure.
right. He's right.
Legend saying, remember when Freddy Krueger had a series? I do remember that short-lived, I think, Fox series, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I'm old. I'm old. I'm old.
No, I remember it too. I totally feel you on that. Darth Bulba saying, or being down to half a heart in Legend of Zelda with 1 enemy left in the room before you can leave. True that. Derivative also saying, fishing horror is great. Yeah, I've been meaning to check that out for a while. Thanks for the recommendation. Amar saying, Plague Inc. Sold like crazy when Corona was spreading, and China had a reaction. And China had a reaction to that, if I remember. Yeah, he's saying it's a game similar to Pandemic, the board game, and he's saying Blue Shell is a true fear. Yeah, when I think of racing games and fear, I think of the Blue Shell for sure. But that is interesting. Yeah, why Plague Inc., a game that simulates a plague spreading, has become so popular, or why movies like Contagion and other things that touch on this have spread so wildly. So it is
Resident Evil.
Yeah, I mean, it is really yeah, exactly, absolutely. Umbrella, you see like Umbrella logos like like on
Didn't you see that meme on Twitter where they were saying like the Chinese
yeah, I remember seeing that one earlier.
Yeah, it was like the symbols were the same. They were like dun dun dun.
Yeah,
Those movies made me upset.
Whatever.
What'd you say?
Those movies made me upset.
Yeah, the movies weren't exactly.
Because like Alice is an Umbrella operative. She has nothing. She's not even a main character in anything. So I'm just like, is a lot.
Well, did you all hear about
the further along it went, it ruined it for me, honestly. It was like they kept reaching for all this stuff, and it was like, really?
And then they started throwing more characters in.
Yeah, like who are these people? Like the last one, put the ship and the weird people with the ponytail, like nice weave, but like I don't understand like the point of why do you have this thing and you're making it was weird.
Yeah,
they stretched out where it was supposed to go, I think.
They have a reboot planned for that. I don't know if you guys saw this. Some announcements
yeah,
from
like
actors.
they tried to do with the Alien series.
I don't remember. Oh, you're talking about Prometheus and everything? I think this is actually... No, I think Prometheus was a unique sort of reboot because it actually continued the main plot line.
It was interesting. It was kind of like a prequel, so it gave you the sense like, oh, so that's where maybe they came from. But then it's also like, here comes these stupid people. Oh, this is so unexplained. Look at this thing opening. Like, there's my face. Like,
yeah, I feel you on that. I feel you on that. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the...
Really just going to be like, let's just know you're going to investigate the situation. You're going to quarantine the spot. Like, you're going to, like, you're not just going to be like, hey, face first. Hey, baby, what's up? Then, oh, no, there's this thing coming out. And it can't be. It was so small. Now it's huge.
Yeah, I have
it's
some
an
issues
alien.
with it, for sure.
It's an alien.
Yeah, although I will say Ridley Scott's, he executive produced a new series on HBO Max called Raised by Wolves, which I've enjoyed so far, so I definitely recommend that. But yeah, I'd invite you all to check out the new cast for the Resident Evil reboot and see what you think to that. I'll probably wind this all down here, folks, but I'm going to ask one last question before we run off, and I appreciate you all taking your time. Obviously, with it being October and Halloween, got my son's mask right here that he wore. If that tells you about my parenting skills, and if you need to report me to child services, this is a screenshot right here for that. It's a little bittersweet, obviously, because Devon can attest to this. Our October, we had a big October event for Potions and Pixels every year, and it was by far our biggest event. I'm talking hundreds of people coming out, costume contest, tons of sponsored prizes, so it's bizarre not to be doing that this year. I might actually share all the kind of cosplay and costumes that people creatively made for that.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, we're going to do a cosplay episode. Angelic Layla's going to be on that on the 20th, which is also her birthday. Shout out to Chelsea for that. Happy early birthday for that. And so we're going to have some amazing guests for that episode. But I'm curious how you all are planning on celebrating Halloween this year. Especially, I know most of us have kids. Like, what's that looking like for everybody? We're just
Well,
getting
we're
a ton of
probably gonna
candy
have-
and watching movies and
Yeah,
stuff
we're
like
just
that.
gonna like. She wants to dress up and kind of like, because they're doing virtual school,
Yeah.
and with my children in their school, they're in Zoom pretty much all day.
Yeah.
I have an 8th grader and a 4th grader. Yeah. She's never what's going on. So she just wants to do it virtually. I mean, we have no choice. She's high risk, so we wouldn't even be able to leave the house even if we wanted to. Like we just can't chance it here. So she sent me a list, conveniently texted me with photos and everything of what she wants. So I have to order that before they run out because I'm the last minute queen. So I'm gonna hopefully do that tomorrow. But yeah, I think that's what we're just gonna do is dress up and hang out.
We're still gonna do
all the
costumes
good
for
candies,
sure.
right? Because now would be the perfect time to get all the good stuff because you're keeping it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because usually you have that, that batch. The good stuff you keep at home, and then the stuff you hand out, and then the good stuff is like kind of like the last minute candy if you have no choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm ready to go candy shopping. I'm excited.
Sure, because then I can just pick specifically what I want.
Yeah, all for me. Yeah, absolutely. It's the best time.
Layla and Devon, how about you all?
Yeah, we're probably just gonna do a movie night or something over here. So probably about it.
Yeah, I feel you.
I'm not gonna be doing too much. I'm probably let my kids dress up if they want to, but they're so chill they'll probably rather just play games and watch movies.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
So I ain't got no kids, but I have a lot of roommates. So I think back in the day, we watched like Goosebumps while it was Halloween. We may do that again.
The TV series or the movies?
The TV series,
okay.
Not the movie. So I think we might do some type of weird watch all the seasons of Goosebumps or something. I don't know.
You should do all of the Poltergeists.
Who?
Oh, and they redid it too on Nickelodeon nowadays. Yeah, they redid the whole Goosebumps thing. There's a new cast and everything.
Nah, I'm good.
I don't know about that.
I'm good. I need that 90s that.
That vibe. Yeah.
I talk about I don't like nostalgia. I really don't.
I don't like young people.
Shows are different, maybe.
Yeah, it would be hard pressed for me to. I'll give it a shot. But no, probably do something like that. I don't know if, as far as the apartment complex, because that's where I'm at, I don't know if they're gonna do trick or treating like that. And I don't ever remember. I've been here for a while. I don't ever remember having candy for trick or treaters here, but in South Carolina where my mom's at, I'm kind of curious on what she's gonna do. I have no idea, honestly.
The best place is go to that, especially living in the South is what I like, because you could just go to the rich people's homes and they do the full size shit.
Hey, listen, I
used candy. I know all those spots.
I had so many.
So early too.
Yeah. I have one small. Hopefully small story. I used to live in an area that was like $300,000 homes or whatever, and people used to do that. They used to come over and stuff. But then stuff happened, and there was basically a complex that was down. And this is when I lived in South Carolina. There was a complex that was down the way from me, so I had to walk up a hill and then walk down it. And I would try to go in that complex to trick or treat, but they barred it off. They barred it off for that reason.
Yeah.
So in Fort Mill, there are a lot of areas that are kind of gated communities, or they're not, and they have a curfew. But also, they would actually stop people from going in if they basically didn't live there.
Man,
but it was kind of a little bit of a. It was kind of a bit of a racial thing, because the area that I was talking about, the neighborhood beside it was not great. So everybody would go over there to trick or treat. And then, they would get turned around by police or whatever, and it was why can't we trick or treat over here?
There's always got to be that one person that's to ruin it for everybody, because God forbid, God forbid, it's just want to trick or treat.
Yeah, but no, I'm probably just gonna rewatch Goosebumps. Watch my friends stream horror stuff like Dead Space, like Jordan's doing right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I see him on there, and in fact, I was going to, as we've been doing on these shows, is we're gonna raid somebody. I was gonna actually ask Layla and Legend. I think I saw that I got tagged in something that Emmy was posting. Are you guys doing some Mortal Kombat event right now, or is there something going on?
Oh, we're doing Among Us.
Oh, Among Us right now. Okay, I was gonna raid if you guys were doing a channel, but why don't we? I'm gonna wrap it up and maybe send folks over to Commander Cool's stream over who's playing Dead Space. Thank you all so much. As always, I really appreciate you all. Let's clap it up for our amazing guests. Hope you all enjoyed that.
I liked it.
A lot of fun. I still don't know what we're going to cover next week. Maybe we can talk about that. I'm a little behind on everything. I'd like to mix in some maybe lighter-hearted stuff. There's this game called Speed Dating for Ghosts. That sounds kind of funny. And maybe
there's
some other...
this one free-to-play game. I'll link it in the chat. But it's like the Grim Reaper thing. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, I'll link it. But it's free to play and it's cutesy and it looks kind of retro style. I thought it'd be fun.
Cool. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you to all the amazing folks in the chat. I see King of the Nerds saying he's clapping it up. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. Appreciate everybody who liked, subscribed, followed, sent in bits. Really appreciate you all. You all make this fun every week. And so we will be back next week on Thursday with another episode of Indie Game Club. And yeah, appreciate it so much. Let me set up this raid real quick. Here for Commander Cool. Make sure to send him some love when you get over there.
That's my roommate.
Oh, so that's perfect right there, right? Should set up the Haunted Discord. Yeah, we should also talk about some good Halloween board games as well. Okay, so we're raiding over there. Make sure to join in. A couple more seconds and we'll sign off right here. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you over there. Have a great night.